Okay, call the meeting of Morrow County Commission to order. Let's start off by joining us on the pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next up, the public comment. We don't have anybody in the room, so if there's anybody on Zoom that has a public comment, raise your hand and then I will go over the rules for the comment period. Otherwise, I won't. Is there anybody on Zoom that wants to make a public comment? Anything? Not?
No.
Okay. Next up is open agenda. Got any items? You guys
I don't
wanna-
have anything. I don't have anything.
Consent agenda. Do you want pulled out of that?
No, move for approval of the consent agenda. I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to approve consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we'll get into our business items. Oregon wildfire hazard map and discussion. Who was that? I forget who's leading that. Nobody's taking responsibility for that one.
I think it was Mike and Tamara.
Yeah, that's what I thought when I read it, but is she on? Oh, she would be right here. She's.
There wasn't a cover sheet for that.
There wasn't?
No, so when you go to the cover sheet, it just shows this and this planning.
Okay, I didn't notice that.
Yeah,
so-
but there wasn't anything. I went to the cover sheet and it just took me back to the previous.
I remember reading planning and I thought I didn't see the cover sheet.
Well, I know there is some concern among Eastern Oregon counties with the fire map. I will step out and say that.
I clicked on the link and it just, makes no sense to me,
No, it's very,
you know, not that my house is in the red area, but it's at a moderate level, but there's 2 1-acre parcels behind me that are in the lowest deal.
yeah.
And my mini storage is on the east end of town here. It's a complete gravel lot. It's in a moderate risk.
We were on the
It-
phone.
It's a gravel lot.
You are gonna talk to us about the wildlife hazard map and discussion, right?
Yes, please. Sorry, I was on a call and time slipped away. So Stephen and I are both here.
Actually, Mike Gorman put it on the agenda.
And then we just wrote a memo and had some maps.
Is he there he is.
Makes sense. No.
I know, he's-
Mike, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Did you want to start, Mike, or you want Stephen and I to?
Go ahead.
Okay, apologies, sincere apologies for being late. So for the record, Tamara Mabbit.
Steven Essex.
This is an informational item for the commissioners. Hopefully also folks listening in or folks who pay attention to your packets see this. Stephen and I put together this memo to just bring to your attention that the state Oregon Department of Forestry will be issuing a final map here in the next few months. And you will probably get calls from unhappy landowners. We have nothing to do with it. Stephen and Landon went down to one of the meetings in Condon. Did you go to Condon or Arlington?
Down that way, someone.
Yeah, down that place someplace. The maps will, it's a new regulatory tool for the state. It will affect building codes, won't really directly affect planning and the work that we do. Although when we it'll be one of those maps that we check when we're writing a report. And the whole purpose of the map is to create safe space for people. And structure. So if you build a structure and you're in the hazard risk area, you have to do fire hardening.
So it's it's a high risk area, and within the WUI, you've got to meet those additional building codes.
And the WUI is the wildland urban interface area. Mike asked us a couple weeks ago about he's already found an error. And he can talk about that. There is the maps, the public comment period has passed, and I know the commissioners were invited to it among many of your meetings that you have. If a landowner, such as the one Mike found, believes that there's an error, there's an appeals process, and that goes directly to the state, not to us.
And that appeals process, I don't think is hashed out yet. They're still working on it.
Yeah, and then the next step for the state will be to promulgate administrative rules for the building inspector, which again isn't us directly, but the building inspector. So that's an extra step building officials will have to check off when they're looking at new structures in that area.
New structures are significant improvements.
Yeah, 50%
It's
or more.
51%, so it's not gonna be a retroactive thing. So if the landowner is within the WUI, within the high risk, they're not going to have to then meet those new standards. If they do any significant improvements to their property or to their structures, they will then have to meet those building code requirements.
Being such things as like a metal roof or something
Yep.
like that.
And a
Yeah.
separation between, trees and landscaping. and
Defensible space, hardening
Defensible space.
hardening of the structure against wildfire.
As a practical matter, it's a good idea, but now it's required. So,
And it's already required in our code for the forest use zone. There's some fire siting standards there.
yeah, you probably remember seeing conditions. If it's in a forest zone, you have to do fire hardening. This just meant, this map, Stephen did a screenshot of the map in Morrow County. It's a lot of area that's not in a forest zone. But, fields burn too. That's the whole point. There's a specific law, so this came into effect a couple sessions ago, which is in the memo. And then it was changed to give counties another opportunity to look at the map. And also there was a piece of legislation that said insurance companies cannot rely on these maps to adjust rates. I have no idea who would control that, but that was the intent of the legislation.
We know that they will.
Well, I know one for sure who says she already made a difference, so anyway. So this is just informational. And Matt,
I guess we want to look at a little bit more, maybe some direction on, so the state will be, they're gonna identify properties that are in the WUI, in the high risk zone, and they're gonna be doing the public outreach on that side. I guess my question to the Board of Commissioners is, do you want us to do an additional property owner notice? Or do we want to rely on the state since this is their map?
I would say leave it up to the state.
Yeah, I would be a little bit apprehensive of putting our hands on it because it's gonna be contentious. It's already contentious.
And again, why do something that's the state's responsibility?
appreciate just having that theme. That was Stephen's idea. I thought it was good, and so we just needed to hear it from you all, that that's the case.
Well, you might have already touched on it, but I know the county has their own rules, If I remember, there was a fire lane deal in Penland that people got a little cranky about there one time.
Ellis vegetation?
Huh?
Is it the Ellis vegetation?
And
Oh.
Firewise,
Uh-huh.
firewise in the Ellis
Yeah, yeah.
vegetation.
stuff like that. So the county still has their certain specs, right, that they,
Mhm.
now
Yeah.
does this supersede all those or an
It's an
addition?
addition. It's additional, yeah. Those are, you probably remember, were standards in our land use code. These will be additional standards for the building inspector.
So in a sense, it'll put kind of some more teeth into what maybe we already had, is because when we would do somebody wanted to site a cabin or something in forest use zone, we'd say you need to follow these. But we didn't really have any enforcement mechanism per se. Now, when they go get a building permit, in order to get the occupancy permit, then the state building code will
That's right.
reference these requirements.
Yep, that's right.
Well, it's going to be far more than just the forest zone. Um, 80% of the county right now is, in the extreme. And, I went down and attended the meeting at AOC on August 26th. I got to, I didn't get to participate. I just, was there as an observer. And of the county commissioners that did speak, only one spoke in favor of this, and I can't remember his name from Deschutes County. But it's not a very popular thing, that's for sure. I think it's kind of twofold. If you're in the extreme area, then there may be opportunity for existing if you have existing improvements to help fireproof them. But on the flip side of that, there's going to be more regulations and stuff you have to do if you're going to build, which may hamper development. And again, this isn't just in the forest. This is everywhere that's orange. And then because this map was produced by using statewide information, it is far, far from perfect. And what concerns me is we're just like when the letter came out a couple years ago regarding the fire classification, hazard classification. I sure fielded a lot of calls, and I believe planning did as well. Probably into the hundreds. I think that's going to happen again when this new letter comes out. And this appeal process for that is yet to be really defined. I wanted to ask, well, is it a one and done thing? But I never got a chance to ask that. I mean, is there a time frame that if you don't appeal, then you're just a high classification because, they did a high level non-site visit and just made this map, and it's just a line in the sand that your property is, high risk. So I have a lot of concerns, both personally and regarding the workload that this probably is going to add to some of the county offices. And I would hope that if we have more opportunity, if the county has more opportunity to be involved, that the commissioners will be more active.
Mike,
Yeah.
the AOC meeting, what came out of it? Did they decide on a group action plan? Did they set up a central person to contact or anything like that, or?
No, they didn't. It was more of an informative meeting. Some representatives from ODF were there, and then the map builder guy, I don't know what to call him, from Oregon State University was there. I kind of felt sorry for them in a way because they really got reamed. But they were given an impossible task to make this statewide map. It needed to be more at the county level for accuracy. But it appeared they really didn't know what the process was going to be. They just know they had to get it done because the legislation said it had to be done. So I think that's part of the problem too. There wasn't a clear path, and people are having to make kind of make things up as they go along to make it work. That's kind of another fault in this. And it's too bad that maybe the Oregon State Fire Marshal wasn't involved more. Maybe they were behind the scenes. I don't know. But I have concerns with, more restrictions on property development. We already have housing issues, in Morrow County. So, if you're not inside the city, if cities try to, expand the urban growth boundaries or something, that may incur, additional requirements for building, for fire suppression and stuff, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but those are just added costs that are, may inhibit development. And then, people that don't realize or don't know that their property may be misclassified. I have a great example of the property where I live right next to the golf course. Our house, it's either the house, green grass, or gravel. There's no native dry vegetation anywhere. I'm classified high. The golf course parking lot right next to me is classified high. The other lot that the Fish and Game owns, to the west of me and adjoining our property, that has 6 foot tall dry sagebrush and rye, is classified as low. So, I mean, it's this map is just totally crazy. And I just see a lot of issues, and I can see, both probably planning, and maybe even emergency management and my department, taking on a lot of extra workload trying to help these landowners or explain to them what's going on.
So Michael, at this point, what do you see that we can do?
I don't know. I would reach out to AOC and ask AOC, and get with your other county commissioners and see what options there may be.
Well, that's what I was gonna suggest. Do you have, now, the way that you found out about this meeting was an email, I imagine? The person-
Yeah, I was already down in Salem for a deal, a meeting with the Department of Revenue that morning. And that's why I asked, and I can't think of his name at AOC. It wasn't Mallory, it was the other guy. Anyway, if I could attend, and he said that was fine, and I appreciate the opportunity to attend. But like I said, there wasn't one county that, except, well, there was only one county that was in favor of this whole process, or one commissioner from one county. All the other commissioners, it wasn't good. It wasn't much fun to watch. I felt sorry for the ODF people and the OSU people for sure.
Maybe you could forward us the email or information to see who, maybe we can contact the person at AOC and see if they're getting some kind of, because they are our representative at the state level. This is what they're supposed to do, so.
Absolutely.
Find out
and
if they're planning some kind of organized effort or something, or, because I would think that's where you get the most muscle. especially
absolutely, yeah.
county. This would be a gimme for AOC, I would think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think current AOC president is from Umatilla County. I can't think of his name. Steve Schaefer.
Danielle Botham from Marion County is the current AOC president.
Okay, then maybe Steve was the one running the meeting. So he might be a resource to reach out to as well.
Well, just to find out, just to get the ball rolling and find out, maybe the AOC has a staff person on it.
Yep.
Kind of formulating some plans. You got it? Okay,
And this is dealing with Senate Bill 762, correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
The lady. So I-
Mhm.
okay, great.
Yep, so I
We
can
got-
for-
we
I'll
got
forward
it.
it.
We
Yeah,
got
I'll
it.
forward it on.
All right.
And there's already 15 other counties that have signed on this letter to reject the map.
Okay,
Okay.
Cause I agree with you, Mike. I looked at, zoomed in on my properties and like I was telling him earlier, maybe before you got on, where my house is it, I don't have anything in the red, but I have stuff in the purple. And then literally a lot that I just bought right behind my house is in the teal color. And everything's the same. It's all irrigated and buildings and gravel.
yeah.
Since my gravelled mini storage lots are in the purple.
So my understanding is that every property that's in the WUI in the high classification is going, this is where I have the problem with it. Those properties are gonna get the notice that they have the ability to appeal. The folks that are in the high class but outside of the WUI are not going to get noticed. And they're not gonna know that they have this appeal period.
Right.
So I guess that comes back to maybe what you'd asked before, maybe that changes the thinking is that we would know who those people are that aren't going to get notified.
That's a massive mailing.
Okay.
That's
So that
hundreds
answers
upon
it.
hundreds
Yeah.
of properties. Now, the properties that are in the wild and urban interface. So now the properties that are in the WUI and in the high, that's a lot smaller mailing. That's a lot easier to handle.
And they
But-
will
but-
get a
And they
notice.
will
They
get a
will get
notice
the
from the
state notice,
state.
Mhm,
But it's the other ones that you mentioned that are,
mhm.
So my thought was newspapers of record,
that would be
talking about it in these meetings. I know
posting on website or something.
posting on maybe the county, perhaps the county website, somehow, some way to get that.
To notify those that aren't going to get a
Yeah.
letter that they're going to be affected.
They could potentially have the ability. And my understanding is that the map is going to be, it's going to be reworked every so often. I don't know what the review.
5 years is what I believe they said in that meeting. Every 5
Every
years.
5 years, I would hope that there's also, if something changes, you have the ability to appeal. I would hope that the state would bake something like that into the process, but I just don't know.
They're saying that they will have the map finalized by October 1st.
Yeah.
And then,
And once that October 1 deadline, once that hits, that begins the 60-day appeal period for the property owners.
and it says that the Forest ODF will handle public outreach.
Right.
So I guess if
Those
you
are
get calls, you just need to say you need to call ODF.
And that's why we included those links at the bottom too, so people can be.
But to give folks in the county a path forward on if they want to appeal, how they do it, and a center point of information for them with the links and the phone numbers.
Are you suggesting just if they're in one or the other, but not both? I don't think the rules apply to them, do they?
No. No, they don't, but I mean, if, what Commissioner Winholtz is saying is he's not in either, or he's in one or the other, but he doesn't agree with the classification on the map. He should have the same ability to appeal his classification as somebody who's in the WUI and in the high class.
Just the map's not correct.
Yeah.
It-
for
it-
sure.
like Mike said, it was an impossible task, right? Like
Yes.
you're using state level data at a very county level problem, and you're always gonna run into that.
It's just, again, back to my example, out my house and everybody around me is purple, but these 2 1-acre parcels right behind my house are in the teal, the lowest level. But everything around there is the purple, the medium level, so it makes no sense.
And my understanding too is that they were looking at irrigated versus
Uh-huh.
non-irrigated.
Yeah, water rights.
Like they were still,
All of those
this
are all
map
irrigated.
this map could
Mm.
still change prior to October 1.
It needs to change.
Right.
Yeah, and in the meeting, they talked about removing all irrigated land, but they don't have a very good way of identifying that, Not all center pivots are irrigated every year. Um, it's like a shot in the dark.
Even at the county level, it's a near impossible task to figure out.
Yeah, correct.
I don't even think OWRD has that layer. I mean, because water rates transfer it.
Absolutely.
It's not based on, those water rate maps are not based on parcels like that are base layer.
So I guess I will ask this question. So I've been asked if we would sign on to the letter that we aren't in agreement with the wildfire map. So is there a consensus with the board that, because I can do that?
Yes.
I would ask if you would kind of head this up and also if you would contact.
I will.
See what happens when you,
I know.
you know, you stick your foot in that one. Well, yeah.
Well, it's kind of in my.
It is.
in my-
Yeah. So anyway, that's what, plus you're kind of clicking with AOC. Would you be willing to contact them and find out if there's some kind of political, you know, testify if you have to or whatever, some kind of political opposition to get this, whatever.
Yep.
Oh, that's nice.
A quick question. Was the letter to sign off on asking for the whole board to sign off, or was it just you individually?
Well,
If it was good for the whole board, it'd probably be a motion
right.
for the board of commissioners to sign it.
And from what I'm seeing, it looks like mostly individuals, so. But it's about, it's about the Eastern Oregon counties members. So that's why I'm a little confused on whether it is the whole board.
Is that something we would have to bring back and, because it's really not on the agenda to sign that letter.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, it's not brought up as part of this conversation, but we can bring it back. Right now, I guess you can sign it individually. The best course then I guess would be for the next meeting. If they say, hey, we want the whole board's action, then we can put that as an agenda item.
Okay, then you'll let Matt know if you want to put it on the agenda. Okay.
And meanwhile, I'll just I will sign the letter and go
Check
forward.
with AOC, find out what they're up to.
Yep.
So I
And-
think that what Stephen was wondering about, posting a notice in the newspaper on the website. Yeah, I'd definitely be in favor of that.
And Commissioner Drago,
Landowners.
if you would be willing to, keep me or us, apprised of any, new developments regarding this, even offline, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Roy's gonna be a point guy on this one, so.
So if we do something in the newspaper, we'll coordinate with admin on how that goes, if that's all right. Since you're a PIO.
There you go.
It's a title you don't want, that's one.
Okay. That's just bringing it to your attention.
Anything else on the wildlife other than that? This was just a kind of FYI deal, wasn't it? Yeah, okay. All right, well, thank you guys for coming. Yeah, appreciate it.
I look forward to both of you.
Thanks. Almost on to it.
Then it would be-
Yeah, next item on is 5C, no, 5B. OEA training requirement, OGEC.
So, Chair Sykes, Commission, this is just bring information to you about a requirement that was passed by state legislation. OGEC training has a mandatory requirement for governing bodies of a public body that has a budget of $1 million or more to take a open public meetings law. This is a 2.5 hour class. It's going to be, classes will start this next month in October, and there are availability to have in-person training where someone will come out. That one, there's a waiting list on it quite a bit to do that. They'll likely not be able to have it done until the beginning of 2025. The purpose of this is just to check to see if this is something that as a commission you'd like to do together, or if you'd like to sign up for the webinars as individuals. And also I do want to kind of just give an acknowledgement. The city manager from Irrigon, Aaron Palmquist, sent out reminders to all the cities about this requirement, but it does trickle down to any elected bodies for special districts. And so we'll be getting a list just to give them a reminder if their budget's over $1 million, that they need to register and come into compliance. I'm sure there's a special district association that's giving reminders, but sometimes the more the merrier to make sure these come into compliance. So just wanted to know if you'd like staff to arrange for a special meeting to watch this together, or if you'd like to take care of it individually.
Yes, my preference would be is do it as a group setting, and we can invite any other people that would need to have this to join us at that time.
I would agree with that.
All right.
Might make it easier for everybody.
Good. What I'll do is I'll check the schedules then, shoot out kind of just a calendar invite, see what days work best, so we can get that registered, and we'll set it up in a room like this so we can all do it. I'll also check where if we're doing it as a group to make sure we can get sign in and get they get a certificate that once you complete, and so I'll make sure we get that taken care of and done accordingly.
And I will assume that if you aren't able to make the group one, you can still do it individually to
Of
be
course.
under.
Whose responsibility is it to decide which public bodies and to notify them? That's yours?
Well, I'm just doing it out of a nicety. It's not a requirement, but we have so many special districts that are right over that mark
It's not a requirement for what, for you to tell us?
for the county to notify. We're doing it to make sure the county's in compliance. I figure since special districts are a quasi entity of the county, that it's just good form to have us give them a reminder.
Yes.
It doesn't say special districts. It says all members of a governing body within a public body that has $1 billion in total expenditures.
So any group that's elected is a
Elected.
governing body. So some special districts are elected. So we just make sure to take a look at that. And
So
see what
Pres
they-
wouldn't be covered.
Pres would not, the port would be,
Open fire would be.
Boardman Fire, all those kind of,
I guess I'm trying to cheating here, finding out if I should notify the Pres people.
no, Pres, you're fine. Appointed bodies are exempt, so.
Right.
If they're interested in doing it,
Yeah, right.
Well, most of those people would fall under anyway, because they're gonna be board commissioners or city councilors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. It just,
Exactly right.
if it's required, I just want to make sure. If I'm required to notify them, I don't want somebody coming back later and telling me, say, well, he didn't notify us. So, you know how that
It's on the
goes.
individual's action on that one, so you wouldn't be something where I don't think you'd be at fault at all for that, and if it was that way, it's.
Also on this, doesn't qualify for this training, but there is a separate session on executive sessions. I know there's a question at one of our last meetings about executive sessions. It lasts about 60 minutes. You can go onto this link and register for that training if you'd like to do it. Always good to just continue the training.
Yeah, I don't mind getting the training, but I still think we ought to run it by legal, especially
Of course.
on light of the last couple of years, the way things have been going. It used to be
Yes.
determinations were made, now everything gets, because of, we all know. Okay. So that's good, Matt. On B,
Okay.
okay, we'll go to C, Morrow County Strategic Plan Process. That's you too, Matt.
Yes, during the last fiscal year, we had budgeted for for the development of a strategic plan. With the recall and a couple other issues, we decided to table that for the time being, let things settle down, so we can have a good focus on the strategic plan when we came together. Strategic plan is set together to help create a vision, mission statement, and then strategic initiatives for the county to use as a governing document for budget decisions and policy decisions over the next 3 to 6 years. We have contracted Local Government Consulting LLC to take care of that. In the packet, there's a breakdown of the phases that that are part of it. We paused the project during project preparation. And so in order to get that started back up, we need a couple things from the from the commission. And one of them is we are looking to form a project advisory committee, or a PAC, that would be comprised of residents or business owners in the community to help guide and give input for this process as we go through. And so there'll be community representatives to help join with staff and the BOC and the consultants in helping direct and guide this setup. The proposal is to have the commission bring up 2 individuals each for that, to have a pack of 6 members to help represent the communities. Well, we'd like to discuss that, and if we have names today, that'd be great. If we'd like to give you a little bit more time to mull that over and then have that as an action item on October 2nd, we can do that as well. The other thing is we'll be working with the consultant on some media, including a survey and some advertising to get out to the community. One of the things that the consultant likes to do is to create a logo so that they can put that out and kind of brand it so people recognize this as it goes through. One of their ideas is to label this endeavor as Morrow tomorrow, which is a neat play on words. And they had proposed a couple different options for logos that represents that, and we wanted to get feedback from the commission on that logo, and if you have a preference of those, or if you'd like us to go and explore other options. I do have that where I could share it on the screen. That real quick. And so they kind of gave a couple different options of Morrow tomorrow. And of course, this is just for this strategic plan initiative.
Not gonna go on the side of cars.
Not gonna go on the side of cars. And so, in fact, I just did my, because I have to correct my business cards, I put the logo and blew it up a little bit bigger, so it's a little bit readable. It's a sharp logo, the seal is, so. But this would be used for anything, and, you know, we'd have the Morrow County seal and logo on there as well, but this would be on any flyers, posters that we have. As far as engaging with the public, just to let you know, we are planning to put posters up at all the post offices. That's always a great place with a QR code for those who are savvy with their smart devices. We will be looking to, work with schools or utilities to get mailers out and reminders for the survey. We aren't looking for a scientific survey, but we are looking to get as much engagement as we can from the community on these matters. And so the action that we have right now is to ask if Morrow tomorrow is a slogan, and if any of these logos look good to the commission, and any discussion on the individuals for the PAC. And if you'd like to have a determination on that today, or if you'd like to mull that over and bring names back on October 2nd's meeting.
So the first thing is, I guess I do have 2 names.
Okay.
Don Russell. And then Brenda Schockman, she's here in Irrigon, is the Irrigon Chamber Director. We're up here in Irrigon, but you're most of our life.
Who was the second one, sorry?
Brenda Schockman. Not have her card, I can give you, has her contact info.
I don't have anybody.
Yeah, I don't have anybody that I know that would do it, so I will have to reach
Okay.
out and get confirmation.
I did contact both these people and they said they'd be willing to do it.
Now, one thing I was gonna ask you is that if there's a extensive plan in there, or is that, at what point do we have input on that?
Oh, you'll have input throughout the process.
No, I mean, not inputting into the plan, but inputting our desire about the actual plan itself and how it does, it goes about its business and what it does.
So as
Or
we,
do we have to accept that the way it is right there?
as far as the process and that, there is flexibility on that. This is what was proposed by the consultants.
Yeah.
we'll have a kickoff meeting, as we get the PAC, committee formed. And they'll be able to review the schedule with the consultants. That'll be an in-person, meeting.
Yeah.
If we need to massage that process, particularly with the schedule as we get later in the year, that would be the time where we can do that.
I'm
Have
talking
it-
about the BOC.
Oh, you would be involved in that
No,
kickoff meeting?
in a setting like this,
Okay,
we want this changed or this done to how the plan is structured, because we're paying for it.
of course.
And, yeah, so we should have, the consultant should present a proposal to us, but we should look through that and say, okay, we want this part, we don't want this, we want this tweaked, in my mind. For instance, I don't think we should have the final plan execution in there. I don't think that's, and I can go into why if you want now, or if it's later, but I just don't think that, I don't even think that decision should go to a public committee to decide. You wanna hear why?
Sure.
So, okay. I think I think what is done with this plan is our territory. Well, not just ours, but let me explain a little bit. So the way I read this here is, it's almost makes you take the plan and do a execution of it within the staff and so forth in the county. Well, the people who are gonna make up this plan, they know probably, most of them won't know the internal workings, the budgeting, the issues. Well, you can see, look at the last year and a half on things like that. So I see this as a tool, for us to do our decision making. And also, if you look down through the county, throughout the county, there's all kinds of citizen advisory groups. There's waste management, there's airport advisory, there's roads, there's the planning commission, of which we did a comprehensive plan for the whole county. Each city has a comp plan that's done, that's required through. So I'm in favor of doing the long range plan, but as far as having go and say, okay, now you have to implement that plan. Oh, well, maybe we don't want to. And I think that's up to, that's taking a responsibility away from us to put that in there. So that's why I don't want to do that. We'll use it as one tool we have in a complex, and you guys can know better, we all know it better than anybody, the complexity of making decisions. You know, it's not cut and dried, and we spend all of us spend a lot of time, background work, and knowing how the county operates, the funding, all the players, and the people who do this, they weren't elected to do that. We were, so I think that should not be included.
Chair Sykes, just for clarification, the plan execution, once the plan is finalized, the PAC would be dissolved. They wouldn't be a standing committee
Understood.
there.
No,
And the plan execution is actually just an optional instrument for us to be able to track strategies and goals, which would be continually brought up to the commission. One thing we want to do that is optional. Their tool, which is fine, and I've actually used it before. We may have different tools with the ERP system and everything that comes through, which we wouldn't even utilize that. So you're correct. We may or may not even want their plan execution instrument in there, and it is labeled as an optional.
I don't want it. It's optional. I mean, even if it wasn't, that's why I asked. We should have the right to change how this plan is executed, but it is listed as optional, so I'll go along with, and I'll say, we should not do this option. That's my thought on it. At this point, before we go any farther down the road, thinking that our picking a logo today is implicit acceptance of how this whole thing is. Well, the rest of it sounds fine, I like that, but this part, based on what I just described, it's how it, I don't think, anyway, I hope I explained my thoughts on it. Do you have any, do you think?
No, I would, wait until we go through the strategic planning process and see what comes out of it. And then, this just seems like it's, if I remember right, it's kind of like a tracking tool to see it.
Well,
You
no,
know,
it's just like, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's just like he said, this would be brought up and interjected at certain times to remind you what the county plan is. And that's up to us. And it's just like, okay, we have all these other advisory committees and maybe this plan addresses things that's not even in the county purview. It's not, we have a certain lane we do, and we have certain services we offer. And to say that, well, people get to say, well, I think we should put pie in the sky. Okay, well, now when it comes budget time, the strategic plan says you guys have to put pie in the sky. So, you see what I'm saying? I think it
Well-
should be a written document at the end, and we'll use it as a tool. And we can go to it when we need to, see what the public, and it's this particular, it's kind of a narrow group of the public. And they haven't been chosen or vetted like our other, the planning commission, the roads, like the ones the parks. There's all kinds of, the planning commissions, there are all kinds of planning groups all around the county. And this kind of, if you use this, it'll kind of shove this ahead of everything that everybody else is doing, because, you come in and you go, hey, this plan says this, So I just think it should be up there for us to read, and I'll read it, I'll be very interested. And use it as we see fit, not try to say, okay, we're gonna stick this in there and say, hey, this plan said this, now you gotta go along with this.
I didn't get that out of reading it, but.
Well, no,
now-
I
now
got
that
it
you
from
bring
what
it-
Matt said.
Yeah,
That's how it would be used. And so I just, I see no reason to have it in there at all. But anyway, that's my thought. Well, anyway, there's no action. Is there? Oh, yeah, the logo. What do you think? Which logo do you guys like?
all I would say is that I'm not particularly fond of logo 3.
I'll pull those back in.
I had a preference, I'd say logo 2.
Yeah, 2 is probably.
I
my-
like two too.
Yeah, so 1 and 2, either one would be good with me, but
1 and 2 are definitely cleaner.
Yep.
3's, I used to be able to know art styles, but I couldn't tell you what that one is more of, but
It's too busy.
1 or 2 are definitely cleaner. 2's a little more simplistic, probably fit in a little bit better, but I do like the imaging.
Okay, motion. You hear a motion to accept two? As a logo?
So moved.
second.
Move to second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. Okay, and we don't have any membership for the strategic plan, so you'll put this on the agenda next time, we'll have it.
Yes, sir.
We'll have the two names, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
This was more or less the fire shot across the bow. I say, hey, we need your help. So if you had them available, that'd be great, but yeah, we'll hold you to it. Come
Okay.
to the next meeting.
All right, next up is our FTE request for risk and project procurement manager, Lindsey Grogan, Matthew Johnson, and Kevin Oates. Be right back. Yes, I like all of them.
Just want to mention one thing real quick too, the last one, someone already messaged me asking, saying, oh, I don't like that new county logo. It's not the county logo. It's not like, I know it was mentioned before. This is just for this project.
Yes.
Just to be clear. So it's the normal county logo of the courthouse has not been changed. That's not this at
No.
all. It's just for this project.
Yes.
It'll run its course in about 6 to 8 months and then be on the report that's given, so.
We want to make sure we're clear. One confusion, like that's gonna be,
No.
yeah.
So what you have today in front of you is an out-of-cycle FTE request for a risk and procurement manager. That would report to the finance department under the direction of the finance director. There are 4 primary technical functions that this position would oversee, such as centralized procurement, risk management, fleet management, and safety programs. So as you can tell, it's an internal support position that would help assist all of the departments in the county. And it has, based on the job description, my office has graded it on a range 25 of the pay scale. The position will not be supervising any staff, but will be managing a centralized program function. So it is highly technical in terms of compliance and regulations. And we met as a personnel review committee to discuss per the classification policy. And basically the committee determined that it was, the reason why it was asked out of cycle is because of the timing of the ERP system. So with workload of the finance department and the implementation of the new ERP system, it would be very beneficial to have this position help build out those modules as we're implementing it. So the procurement is a large module in the new ERP system, the fleet, and do you have anything to add to that part? On the fleet side, ERP system?
As it relates to that project, so right now, generally speaking, procurement's kind of dispersed across the county. And while we're not looking to propose completely centralizing everything, I think that there's some significant benefits in centralizing some things to introduce some more internal controls and recent things that we've seen come to the board. I think clearly justify that. And so what we're, as it relates to this position, this individual would oversee those parts of procurement that have been centralized. And I don't have the details of what that looks like yet, because those are processes that don't exist today in the county. So as we look at implementing a system, we also have to write, design, build processes and integrate those with all of the offices and departments of the county. So that's why the timing of it would be ideal to do it at the beginning of that process, so they could be integral to that process. But like Lindsay said, it's not only a procurement position. So that's what I have to add there.
Okay. Another thing that we evaluated was that since it is an internal support position, it helps, with the workload of the staff of several different departments that are doing their own procurement or procuring their own fleet or, managing their own fleet or risk. So one of the things that we identified throughout the county was vehicle inspections. So who's doing those? Who's making sure that each vehicle is maintained? This is not something that is centralized and thus is not controlled very well or regulated very well. So these are just some of the identifying factors that play into this centralized role. And Matt, do you have anything to add to the purpose?
Yeah, I will admit I was the instigator on this request. And looking at it as we went through this year and dealing with anything from grant compliance to procurement policy compliance to even sitting in with the safety committee and needing a dedicated staff member who can get trained up on those items and help interface with insurance and risk management and all those things. That's something that we've just been bereft on. The departments kind of have to float and take care of it. And they're very earnest in doing it, but we've tripped quite a bit. We've just found out this last week that we that for one area we used federal grants to purchase a vehicle, which was like not a good thing. And you have to jump through additional hoops when you do those kind of things. And so we want to take care of it. So particularly for the departments that aren't power users, that still have the requirements in that, they'll have the support to be able to do it right, do it right the first time, instead of having us come back and have to fix things afterwards, which then has a trickling effect where we aren't taking away from Kevin's time or Tammy's time, and we're not having the departments have to track things. It's all someone to take care of it and have it centralized and make sure we're consistent with our efforts. A lot of times I don't want to silo things, but I want to be, and this could be seen as a centralization, siloing of procurement, but really and truly, this is giving the resources and having a dedicated professional approach on procurement, which can cause us heartburn and issues if it's not taken care of appropriately. Along with that, you know, they can help with all the RFPs, whether it's, you know, the circuit court and the fairground improvements, all those items, and they can standardize and make sure things go easier, which then streamlines things for our legal counsel, for myself. It makes a lot of a huge part of the supporting aspect into a more streamlined issue. I've worked with this type of position in other municipalities, and it works very smoothly as we implement it, and asking that the commission would consider this request.
So I can see the benefits of having, I mean, as has been mentioned, you know, we've had compliance issues. And, you know, we definitely want to always be following state law and procurement rules and adherence to the requirements of grants and stuff like that. So I see where this is very beneficial from that aspect. I guess where I'm hanging up in my mind is that it gets down to application. And I guess I think of the roads department because they're very different from, you know, some of the others. You know, maintaining that fleet, I don't know that the centralized person is going to have the insight as to what each equipment need is when it comes to purchasing, as much as the person that runs that department. And, you know, I suspect that I would expect that the maintenance personnel at the roads department would be on top of their maintenance schedules and getting you know, a licensed truck can get its federal inspection done annually, you know, be up to date on all that stuff. I would expect that they are doing that and know what's required, where somebody else that's sitting over here maybe isn't up to speed on what the requirements are for the department needs, the federal requirements. Maintaining the pool of cars that we all use is different than maintaining the road department and stuff. So, but I can see where the benefit is to Eric is that maybe this person reviews the grant that Eric gets, or, you know, the contract, the purchasing contract that we've seen with, you know, the cooperative purchasing, to make sure that they're following those guidelines. You know, I guess, again, it goes back to how that is going to play out on a day-to-day basis, is where I'm having problems wrapping my head around, but I do see the benefits of it. And I do like the aspect of that, as I understand it, now we're going to have a centralized person that's in charge of safety, heading up all that, make sure, you know, and I do see where that'd be benefit. You know, maybe they help do some internal OSHA inspections at the road department as an example, to make sure we're in compliance there before OSHA comes in and dings us.
Yeah.
You know, those types of things, I definitely see the benefits of it, but on the day-to-day application, I see Kevin has a comment. So.
Yeah, just to respond to your comments there, I would say, and I'll give you kind of a real world example. You know, if Eric needs to buy a pug mill, we already bought one, right? But just hypothetically, you know, the way this position would typically work, you know, Eric will have his specifications and preferences and whatnot. And that's, you know, really where he's got the expertise. And as far as the RFP and examining the different cooperative agreements that are potentially available for us to utilize and following the actual procurement law takes a significant amount of time. And I would argue that it's you know, of less value to the county to have our public works director doing that.
Well, I agree with you.
Or support staff in the public works department. Because it's so complex and there's so many things and, you know, the parameters can change, you know, relative to grant funding even, and what has to go into it. You know, I did procurement in a prior, when I first started in a prior organization and, it filled a very similar role to this. In my first day there, I got a specification to do a bid in procurement for a, you know, $500,000 digger derrick. And, it was, you know, the spec and the design is not something that we would envision this person doing, but the actual procurement, managing the bids and, interactions with bidders, and just managing that whole process because it is a pretty burdensome process.
So I guess back to kind of your example of, you know, the pug mill. So Eric would contact this person and say, I want a pug mill, you know, it's been budgeted for, here's the specs. So then this person would go out, issue the RFP, get them back, and then they go over them with Eric to make sure that they meet what he wants. Is that how that would work?
It's something as technical as that, yeah, to make sure that, because Eric's got the expertise, something that's a little bit, you know, less technical, they would just award the contract. It's gonna be a level of.
So a road grader of this size that.
Right.
Then he wouldn't have to go review it again because it's not as technical as that. Okay.
Right, but if we're buying a pool car, for example.
Yeah.
Or a sedan, you know,
Yeah.
just go get it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, one of the things to point out is, if you look at the job description, one of the licenses that we'd expect them to get is the Oregon Procurement Basic Certification. There's a couple layers on that. We're expecting this person to become extremely versed in the state procurement laws so that we can just make things go good. So in your case, like you said, we need a cabin chassis with this, we need the work beds here. You give me everything that you need. They go out and get it according to the Oregon requirements so that there's no questions and no audit flags as they come through. And then they bring it back, say, is this what you have? And then Eric works with them on the award and they bring it back to the VOC if necessary. So it's making sure that those technical professional skills are in the right place, that it's a resource to all the county departments, that whether they're a once a 3-year kind of capital purchase or public works and sheriffs and that are doing it regularly and just need to make sure we've mined our P's and Q's kind of thing.
Like I say, I see the benefits of it. It's just the actual implementation.
I'm conflicted on this and not so much as I used to be. When it first was proposed, I thought, why is the county of 12,000 people made a special purchasing engine? But then some things evolved and I had a meeting with Kevin and Matt about it, some things and realized this is more than just a purchasing agent. And I think I've always thought one of the strengths we have in this county is our ability to deal with many different kinds of grants that, you know, that aren't necessarily, you know, in our particular area of expertise. But I think our finance department has done really good to strengthen that part, as it's allowed this county to do things that it might not be able to do, if that makes sense. You know, we've said, okay, we'll do that. We'll go for this grant, or you know, we'll take on this project because we have confidence that we can, one, you know, we have some good grant writers and people that, you know, that do that, but there's 3 parts to it in my mind: the revenue, the disbursements, and then the accounting afterwards. And those 3 things have to be done correctly, or you get in trouble, you know, and you know, and you could, auditors will flag you and all this kind of thing. So and then, you know, and we've done good with our software in our accounting department, and the personnel there have done very well to make that an asset for this county, I think. And it's allowed us to do a lot of things where I've heard some people in other counties go, we didn't mess with it because it's just too much trouble, you know, a grant or some project. Well, a lot of it is they didn't understand it and they didn't want to mess with it, but it seems to me we've been able to. So when I saw this, then I understood, and also after our meeting and some things that went on, I saw that this would be of value. My thing that I worry about this is the interaction with the departments, the elected and the staff, you know, because I've heard the other side of this also is, some people think that we're trying to consolidate, everything in the administration of the county, you know, and have it, and I'm just telling you that, I'm not saying this, I'm just telling you, this is the part that kind of gives me a little heartburn, is because this is something we either got to overcome or make sure that people understand that that is not the purpose of it. And I'm not so sure, you know, I didn't get a chance to read your job description, but you know, I don't think is in there, it's, to do this kind of work as you've been doing, is it, Kevin? No?
No, it's not.
No, and I mean, we appreciate that you have been going and doing the extra, you've been policing it, you've been working with people. And, you know, and I understand more so than I did, you know, several months ago, what you've been doing, you know, so, you know.
If I could interject, it's not in his job description to do it, but it's in his job description to hold the purchasing procurement packets afterwards. So he's supposed to get everything when it's all buttoned up, and it should be in good order. And so he takes on stress on his shoulders of saying, well, where's the bids? Where's this? I'm supposed to write a PO or something like this for this. I don't have anything. And so this would help stopgap that and make sure we don't have that delay when a department says, I need these vehicles. Well, you don't have your packet. I'm not gonna pull the trigger on this, this check.
You know, understood.
So,
And
yeah.
and that's not, you know,
And
and I
I-
appreciate the extra, you know. thing that-
I guess, and I would say, yeah, to some degree, it is definitely my opinion, recommendation to consolidate some of the administrative functions because of the need for more process controls and oversight. Right now, the way that we're purchasing, a lot of times, as we've seen, we may not be aware of an issue to the point where the county's already expended or is liable for paying for something that may or may not have been a lawful purchase under procurement rules, whether it's state statutes or county ordinances. So yeah, there needs to be more oversight on the front end of the process as a preventive measure and preventive control. And yeah, you know, the accounting guy talks about the internal controls, and they're a pain, and everybody, you know, it doesn't necessarily reduce the administrative burden on everybody, but what it does do is it safeguards and protects the use of public funds.
That part I wholeheartedly like and agree with. The other part is, and I think it depends on, I don't know if it's where what kind of person you hire or how much leash you give them. But if it starts getting into the area of them, any kind of questioning of the merit of the purchase, you better watch out, because you know, then you're stepping on especially electeds. You know, they make their budget, they think, and we haven't elected here, I'm sure he doesn't want to speak to it, but that's their budget, and they were elected, and they're on the same level as us. They don't work for the county, they're not employees of any of, you know, but we do control, and we do have responsibility of their funding. That's absolute, and they understand, they understand that. But see what I'm saying, is it should not, there shouldn't be overreach on this position where pretty soon they question, well, do you really need that? Or, you know, why are you buying that? No, is your stuff in order? Then, okay, you know, and it's different with the department head because they work directly for that.
Well,
I'd
Yeah,
say that's absolutely not the intention of.
No, I know it's not the intention. I'm just looking for, what you call, I don't know what they call it, drift,
Mission creep.
mission creeps. I want to watch for mission creeps, see? And one other thing before I get to Mike, I think the type of person you hire at this makes a big difference. Yeah, they're gonna be good with figures and good with that, but I think they ought to have a little touch of people skills in there, especially if they're gonna be the front man dealing with electeds and staff people. to keep them in compliance, because. And I've read this job description a couple times and I'm not quite sure how much they're gonna interface with an elected, for instance, or how much they're gonna interface with a department head. But I think if they're not somebody with people skills, you could have a lot of agitation and trouble, you know, and make sure that they're able to work with people so they understand exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to get you to a good spot with your budgeting and your procurement and stuff. We're not questioning you, you know. They're gonna, I mean, unless it's staff, then, you know, then you have direct control. They expect that. So, yeah, Mike?
He muted himself.
There.
Mike,
Yeah, I couldn't unmute there for a minute. Yeah, this is kind of new. Why wasn't why didn't Matt or Kevin or maybe they did talk to some of the department heads, but you know, why weren't we involved sooner in this? You know, I'm not a power user and I was asking, you know, not necessarily asking for help recently, but just asking if I was doing the process correctly. And I got no response from finance, and finally Kevin, or excuse me, Matt, kind of helped me out with it. But I don't know. This just seems like a lot of money for someone, you know, to just to have someone help with procurement. You know, I've been buying stuff for several years now, and the procurement rules really haven't changed, but the county, every time we get a new finance director or a new administrator, the process or the procedure changes, and that's more challenging than the state law. And so I don't know. I'm just a little confused on why we think we need this.
Could I interject? I want to interject one thing here. Is it possible to train one of our existing staff, say the assistant administrator, to do some of this work? I mean, we're going from nothing to a full-time FTE person, you know, and, you know, is it possible to do that, you know, have them take on the, you know, responsibilities and, you know, see if he'll get licensed and all that stuff, you know?
Over the last 6 months, I would estimate I spend 25% of my time on procurement. As Mike just mentioned, sometimes I can't be responsive because of workload.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and I'm not covering it all.
And you're not what?
I'm not covering it all.
Okay.
There's still.
That still doesn't get you to 100% FTE.
Plus not 100% procurement either.
Because it's
The
safety.
position.
safety. And
True, but I mean, if you're gonna go to the public works department and say, okay, we're gonna take over your procurement processes that you've been doing a long time for the airport, and they've been doing a pretty good job, I think, you know, they used the example of the public works, you know, they do a lot, and you're gonna say, okay, now, to give this person his responsibilities full-time, then they are going to have to take away what some of the departments are doing, in my mind.
Well, it frees
Necessarily.
up their, you know, in the example of, you know, Eric in Public Works, it frees up some of his time to be devoting to other things and to making sure compliance.
Exactly, and that is what.
That's, so that, because, you know, there's other things that he could be doing instead of reviewing over all this, you know, you have this one person that sends out the RFPs and they're gonna be versed in making sure that they're following all the rules.
Yeah, and that brings back exactly to what I'm saying, I'm thinking is, you know, whoever is here, or whoever has the responsibility to explain to departments and electeds exactly what was going on with this, to me, that's a very, very important job to explain to them. Because I've already seen some animosity, you know, a little bit here, and then I got an email from somebody else. So it's, I don't know if it's animosity, it's real skepticism, and it's, hey, you know, what's gonna happen here? So I think there's a heavy lift there.
Well, we've seen where an elected officials department didn't follow.
I know, no, I'm
And,
not,
and that's what we're trying to
I know,
avoid. because
exactly.
it
No, I
paints
would,
a black eye for the whole entity.
no,
not
I
just us.
understand that. I understand that. That's why I said at the beginning, I get, I know, I understand that part of it. I'm just concerned about what kind of person is this gonna be a confrontational person?
Oh.
Is there gonna be mission creep and all of a sudden they're saying, well, we're gonna make all these decisions for you? These things, to me, have to be answered, not necessarily to me, but to staff and electeds.
And
You see,
Chair,
does that make sense?
I'll just tell you, having operated with one of these positions before, they become more or less a concierge service for the departments. They're there to say, what do you need? Let me come get it for you. They're only gonna question if it's not budgeted. And, you know, one of the things that's pointed out, is, it's, you know, some departments are like, well, this is the cheapest one. Do I have to go with that? And this position would be there to reiterate, we're talking best value for the county. So let's talk about these things. And while the original title, I will tell you, the original one was Risk Compliance and Procurement Manager. And we've shortened it down just because that'd be really long for a business card, as already still is. There is going to be compliance, but in reality, this is service and responsiveness to the departments while making sure that things are taken care of in the way they need to be.
No, I understand it. I understand the purpose and the mission and all that. And I, you know, and I understand what Jeff was saying. But I also know, you talk about another example of a municipality. Was there 4 electeds that you had to work with?
This is when I was in this position for Summit County. I had multiple electeds.
Okay,
I worked
how
with
did
the
that
sheriff's
work out?
department, worked great.
okay.
We actually help support special districts as well. And we'd go out, I purchased ambulances, fire trucks. I knew nothing about those. We'd go, we'd say, okay, what do we need to do? Here's the steps. How can I help you? And we got things taken care of.
Okay, see, that's what I want.
So I agree with you, Dave, that, you know, the person's gonna have to have some people skills. It's not just, you know, to deal with these people, so. Go ahead, Justin.
Thank you. District Attorney hat. I want to make sure I
Yeah,
don't want Mike.
yeah,
there you
yeah,
go.
we wanna hear it from you,
Yeah, and that's just I don't want Mike being the only one. I think and I can definitely appreciate all the work that Kevin does on these. He has to look through these and review them, and that takes a lot of time. The only thing that concerned me when I first heard or saw this sum was 2 parts. One was that depending on the purchase amounts that they tell you they must go through this person. So that's concerning. I think there's a lot of questions with department heads of like, just as Mike was saying, like, oh, do I need to do the best? Do I have to choose the lowest cost? Do I have to do this? And having a person who can answer those questions or be available for it makes sense. If the response is that Eric has to give, well, I need this machine and I'm pretty sure it's these qualifications, and then he has to be hands off, he's not part of the process. I think that's where, as department head and elected official, that's where the concern comes. I think that's the idea where I'd be like, well, it'd be good to have a person there for questions. And you know, not require more work of department head who's already overworked, but a requirement saying it has to be funneled through here. That's where I think department heads might feel like they're losing some control on it. I think the safety position makes perfect sense. A lot of those things make perfect sense. The other one's a little bit.
What would you think about this? If we tabled this, Matt, and you met with the electeds, or maybe the department heads, I don't know, and said, okay, here's what we're planning. Give me some input. And then see what they think about this job description, because they're the ones that are going to, you know, be neck deep in the thing, you know? And we've heard, you know, and like I said, I got an email and I've heard, so maybe that's, I mean, when I first read this, my thought was, I want to look at this some more. So what do you think about that? Sit down with the electeds and say, and have a discussion, which they said, this is the first we've heard about it. So I don't feel right approving this without some input. I want to go around and talk to the electeds. If you wouldn't agree to a meeting where they all sit down and talk about it and you get their concerns, I will go around and listen to them because I've heard enough already.
I'd be happy to have a meeting. We have a regularly scheduled meeting. I did talk to Mike. He said, well, when bounced this off before we purchased the copier. He says, that sounds like a pretty good idea. The sheriff and the undersheriff, as we talked with them and worked through this, they're like, wow, this will be awesome.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't sat down with the clerk and district attorney, and I.
What about Public Works? I know their department.
Public Works, so what we've talked about, with Eric. He's aware of this and actually is very keen on it. Again, we had, with this last purchasing, we had to do some juggling because some things weren't quite done right. And so, they're of the mind saying, wow, this would be a great resource. A good couple of them, may be concerned about scope creep, and we gotta kind of look at how much they purchase. It will really have an impact on them.
And, you know, I mean, if you had it in a group setting, I think that's what I would like to see,
Yeah.
something like
Be
that.
happy
is
to do
have
that.
you have a meeting and have department heads there too, because they're all gonna live under it. And, you know, I mean, sure, you know, electeds don't necessarily, not necessarily, they do not work directly for the county.
Yeah, David, can I, I'm
Yeah.
Chair, I'm sorry. I think we could maybe all agree in the room that, you know, procurement is transacting county business, right? And my role, and I'm not an elected official, appointed official, but that is squarely within my role is to implement and oversee and define the transaction of county business in every department and office in the county. That's actually in statute. So what I've witnessed, and no offense intended to anybody, but there's this perception, well, you know, I've done it this way and I want to continue doing it this way. That may or may not be the right way. If we don't want to put the controls and processes in place on the front end, which actually, you know, I would argue as, you know, that is under my scope of responsibility in terms of transacting business in, again, all offices and departments of the county, then we're gonna have to just continue dealing with the same issues that we've seen recently. And there'll be another one at the next BOC meeting that I didn't get on the agenda for this one, where I'm not able to authorize or approve expenditures because we're not following the processes on the front end. So I certainly appreciate the desire for, you know, elected officials to, you know, wanna own, you know, the processes and all the things ongoing in their areas of responsibility. But there's a need for, and, you know, really, as Matt suggested, the sheriff's office is really the largest office that's led by an elected official that is affected by this. And I don't want to speak for them, but you know, we certainly spoken with them significantly about it. And there's, you know, they see some significant advantages to it. But so, you know, the processes for spending public money in Morrow County, they are going to change. And that's my area of responsibility to do that and make sure that those controls and processes are in place. So I just want to make sure that we're delineating appropriately what that responsibility is, because you know, there's not anybody that's responsible for every little thing in every department or in their department or office that they manage.
That's why when we had that meeting and talked about a certain situation, my eyes were open when just listening to you explain these things, see? So that's what I'm hoping might be done. I'm not saying change, you know, have them be able to reject it, just do a little more rollout on it. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Say, okay, here's what we're going to do, because you are responsible. It's going to be done. But, you know, here's what coming down the road, you know, and rather than us approve it and say, okay, you know, is that, see what I'm saying? Just kind of tell them, and then, okay, here's what we're planning on doing, you know, and like I said, when I heard you, you know, in our meeting talk, and it was eye-opening, and it should be, because it lays out, you know, the county's fiscal responsibility. And that is, there shouldn't be any argument, I wouldn't take any argument from any elected that fiscal responsibility is theirs. It isn't. And I think most of them know that. So,
Just to some degree there, it is.
well, okay, then you.
They
you
can't,
should-
they
you
can't
need
expend
to-
in excess of
yeah,
appropriations.
You need
Yeah.
to reiterate that to them, I think, because that's clear cut, just like you just got through saying. That's cut and dry.
I'm a little cautious about setting a precedence where administration needs to vet any change in process with other elected officials before bringing it to consideration of the commission body that is supposed to make those
That's fine.
determinations.
Okay, just go ahead and
Just-
say, just what we're gonna do, but then wait until, I mean, have the meeting, just like Mike was,
can.
is have it and explain it and then bring it back to the board. And that's fine with me. They don't necessarily have to be able to tweak it or input or anything. And I don't even know, I mean, the job description's out there, but talk about, this is how it affects you. This is what we can do for you. This is the way it's gonna work. That's more, you know, the benefits, you know, of this process. And yeah, I'm not great on having them give input. I'm just, you know, I get that. So that's your authority. And don't wanna infringe on that at all. But I do think that they should be explained before we sit up here and make a motion to approve. That's my thought. I don't know, what do you think, elected?
I can absolutely say what I think on that aspect. I think that would be a big change in the process. The communication is an important part. I think that's for any department, any elected official or anything else, is the communication beforehand, to get feedback. Because you're looking at expertise of people who've been there for a long time. I mean, there's a reason why something is done. Maybe it's not right, absolutely. But I think, just like we've done in the board has done a lot of things, is taking feedback and then taking into account, may decide, hey, we appreciate the feedback, but we're going to, you know, here's the other reasons why we think it's important. And so I think the idea of not going forward for electeds or department heads on it, or while running through from department heads but not others, I think that I don't like that aspect. So, I mean, then, and I think that's the concern, I guess, is that I think the communication is important before coming to the Board of Commissioners. That's just personal as an elected official. Of course, I'm biased. You know, I want to be confused. I mean, that's how it is. That's fair.
No, You're
but-
the input that we wanna hear, actually. You're not biased. You know, so,
And so I think it's, once that step is done, and then it goes before, then it's all out there by saying, hey, I had the opportunity. I'm still maybe not happy, but the board says, well, you gave your feedback, we took it into account. But because these other issues, or these other benefits, we have to go forward with them. That's where I think there's a benefit of having a joint meeting between the department heads and the elected officials, not separate, together. As a meeting to touch base on this. One other aspect I think is, that might alleviate some concerns. I know we talked about at the beginning of this position was the idea that, well, we're not sure like what the full role is going to be of the person. We want them hired so they can help decide what their role might be. Is what it seemed. I mean, that's how I heard it at first, was the idea of saying how far they're going to go. Was that? No.
No,
Okay. Or they set this
they're being
process up.
hired to help establish the process as we implement the ERP system.
Okay, well,
So
that,
they're in from the get-go and saying, okay, here's our process, here's where we need to do, we need to make sure this system does this in order to best affect the county policies.
well, that does, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. If I could maybe just clarify on that, the processes that are going to, the functionality in this system, those processes are gonna be built out over the next 12, 18 months, however long it takes to finalize our selection and do an implementation. Part of designing those processes is that, you know, here's the requirements and here's what we need to have in place. And then collaboration with departments and offices across the county to figure out, you know, get their input on what that implementation actually looks like, so that we can make sure that we're considering all the perspectives. That takes a lot of time. So having, that's what we were saying, there's a benefit to having this individual, the role is defined, that's what we've proposed is the role. How it relates to purchasing and procurement processes, which, and I guess I'd remind also there's other aspects, it's not 100% a purchasing role, but as it relates to those, as those processes are defined and implemented to accommodate a new, new technology that's going to be implemented, we need to have the resources to dedicate to that, or it becomes something that, I whip up at 11 o'clock at night because I'm too busy during the day dealing with procurement issues.
And that makes sense. I mean, and I think that's one thing I want to mention about this position too, as elected officials, that the safety aspect, something that makes sense, compliance makes sense. Like, wow, that's a lot of value. The stops, I think the only spot so far that I think any elected official, don't want to speak for them. I know Mike has his hand raised, so might have another question, is the idea of how far this procurement one goes by. If it's the idea of saying, oh, well, anything over a certain $50,000 amount, just like we do for office purchases, where we have to have before the board. It was like, oh, well, that has to go before the procurement person, that they'll be in charge of those. Okay, at least we'll know. If it's saying, oh, well, anytime you need pens and stuff like that, we're gonna order it through the procurement. You just email them and say, hey, we need these binders, and they'll go through their process. That is where I think the issue comes. That's where the unknowns there, and the unknowns are what worry anyone. I'll say as an elected, but anyone. And so that's where I think the concerns are, where I think this meeting might be important to have and kind of talk those through with the elected and department heads. And I'm sure there are department heads guaranteed that are definitely in favor of it. I can see that, I can see maybe Public Works, being in favor, saying, hey, this takes up all my time. But for the offices where it doesn't, that's where we feel that it's like, I can see the value of a person where we say, hey, I need help. I don't have the time and resources. Can you do this? Yeah, I can help you with that. But for the department to say, no, I think I got this. I can handle this. Being forced to do it, that's where I think the concern comes in somewhat.
So, coming from a position of a department head running a terminal. So there was a time when I just went and got what I needed because I was far removed from anybody else, right? I was very urbanized where I was at, and I just went and got what I needed to get. And then they changed that and said that you had to go through purchasing processes to do everything. And it became very cumbersome, just as Justin's talking about. If I needed to go get a bearing for a wheel today, I couldn't go through Vancouver and have them get it and ship it to me and have that piece of equipment running when I needed it running. So those were some of the stumbling blocks. And then it got to the point where if you needed something that was not even necessarily major, but you had to go through a change of management. And then that was just a huge stumbling block, and it really slowed the process down. So I understand, I completely understand why we need this procurement position, right? It's like we've been talking about. It's an important position. We need to keep in compliance. But I have concerns about how much control in procurement that this individual would have, because it can really slow processes down and bog everything down.
So, this would not change our currently adopted procurement policy, which allows departments and actually anyone departments can make purchases up to like $5,000 without any kind of procurement packet. They can just make those purchases. And so anything up to $5,000 they're doing. So your office supplies, your other things, this person will never touch it. Under $15,000, department heads have the capacity to do it, and elected officials, but they have to have a procurement packet. So if it's simple things, state contract, those other things, this person might just be a resource to say, hey, it's state contract. Oh, I'll just confirm that for you. Go ahead and issue a PO, which will simplify things quite a bit as we get POs and ERPs. So that they become the PO checker. Anything over $15,000, we have to have 3 informal bids, make sure things are taken care of, and have to have some kind of approval. This position would be able to approve things up to $50,000 before getting me involved. They would still manage things over $50,000 and assisting the departments, but before a PO or a contract signed, they'd come to me. Anything over $150,000, they would be the ones coming with the bid, department head or elected official to bring it to the BOC for approval. So really, we are not, it doesn't become a purchasing agent,
Right.
which would be ordering every ream of paper. This is just in compliance with the current procurement process and provides that oversight and assistance that we've been missing.
So, and I understand that. So getting back to what Dave said, I think that if you were to communicate that to the department heads and elected officials, you know, I mean, I'm sure they have that policy. They should have that policy.
Just
So-
reviewed it this last
Yep,
meeting.
so, understanding that, but having it be fully transparent out in front of them, what the process of this position would be, I think would be helpful, just so you don't have these animosities and, you know, misconstrued conceptions.
Yeah.
So,
And definitely can do that, whether you take action on it or if you'd like to table it, and we'll bring it after we do that meeting.
Mike, did you have your hand up?
jump off.
He's gone.
Oh, he's still there.
Mike, did you have something you wanted to say?
Mute. Oh, okay. I can't unmute, so,
That's to keep the Zoom bombers from jumping on.
well, Justin and Commissioner Drago pretty much illustrated most of my concerns, so, I don't need to beat that dead horse anymore.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
So if, Kevin, would you be agreeable to being at that meeting? If you need, the staff,
Of course.
okay, I just want to make sure because I think, I just want to make sure that it's, I figured you would and want to, and then because you have the, just, it's imperative, I think that you be there, but. So I think the discussion here kind of gives you a little bit of idea where to kick off that meeting and kind of hold these thoughts. So what do you think, guys? I'd like to have a motion to, this is my idea, is to table this. In the meantime, instruct Matt to hold a meeting of the electeds, a joint meeting of the elected and the staff with Kevin, and explain the new position, the responsibilities, and take questions and answers. And then bring it back to the board, the next meeting. Is this something you can hold for next meeting, or whenever you get done? It doesn't matter.
It would be tight before next
It
meeting.
doesn't
but we
matter.
can-
Whatever, just bring it back to the board.
So I have a question for you. So timeline, right? I mean, obviously this is important. It needs to be done before the ERP goes into effect. So my question is
So
about timing.
I don't wanna commit to dates, but just to give you an idea where we're at, you'll be getting an update. Likely on, by the October 16 board meeting about our system selection, and proceeding with contracts. So that'll be on either the 2nd or the 16th board meeting. So we've got time, because once we do that, once we actually have and then we have to negotiate a contract, statement of work and everything, that could take a couple of months. Once we have that in place, and we actually have a signed contract, is the point where it would be very beneficial to have this person here. Now, that being said,
We have
not a lot of
challenges.
applicants.
No.
I mean, for these types of positions, we haven't had, I mean, we've had success in filling them ultimately, but sometimes it takes a considerable amount of time because of a fairly limited applicant pool. So, that can also take months. So, it's not, like a mission critical, gotta have it today sort of thing, but just, being aware of all of those.
Is tabling the correct, I guess I'd ask council, is tabling the correct, I don't think
I would
tabling is
think,
the
no,
correct.
I think it's, if we can set it for a set date, if you want to continue if you want to say, make sure it's on another agenda, continue this for discussion, the next board commissioner meeting or the one after. I don't know how long it would take. I know we do it every 2 weeks, so. that
There's
might
no,
be-
in the past, I've had some issues with tabling and
Try to bring it back.
trying to bring it back, yeah, so I just, and it's not, just tabling may not be the
Just the,
correct.
Yeah, I would say continue it or set it over until the next board commissioner meeting. Or I don't know, usually a set, the next meeting or the one after, where those dates are.
The second and the 16th.
Second of October. Or just say the next,
It
Well-
depends. Well, the only weird part, of course, with the next meeting would be also we get a special meeting.
Yep.
And does that mean it fits under the special meeting? So that's where I started thinking maybe a set date on the second might be the best
what if
option.
we said to continue this discussion until brought back on the agenda by the county administrator?
After, yeah, that should be fine. After the
You know, if we
holding of
have
that
a-
meeting, I
Can we
guess,
have a
too.
special meeting? It doesn't matter. We'll just decide when he's ready to go, after he's done what, meeting staff and stuff, whatever that is, that he can put it back on the agenda.
That should be fine.
That's all right. Okay, I'll move, we continue the discussion on the risk management position and until it's put back on the agenda by the county administrator.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion. All in favor?
The-
Oh, discussion.
Further discussion.
Oh, okay.
Discussion.
All right.
So I guess my concern is, and Matt kind of alluded to it, is that, and I agree with you, Dave, in that as the electeds, we're all kind of on the same level here. But each elected is elected to do a certain job. We are elected to set policy and provide direction. As a district attorney, he's to prosecute crimes. Mike is the assessor, is to assess property and collect the taxes. Bobby is the clerk to record things. Sheriff is to run the sheriff's department. I don't know, so, for the sake of argument, playing devil's advocate, the electeds come back and tell Matt that we don't like this. Are we going to take that into account and not implement this, even though we think that it's?
I mean,
So-
I mean,
so-
you don't wanna.
So I don't see what the point. The communication and talking to them is good, but if, again, to not move forward with the
Yeah,
process,
well,
if you aren't going to, again, we are to set the policy and they aren't, and
Right.
again,
Well,
with
the-
all respect to them, they are on the same level here.
Yeah.
But each of us has our own defined job. And
Right.
I view this as our job to either to approve or not approve and not the other elected official.
I agree, but there's no reason that it was on the agenda today, except somebody wanted to put it on. It didn't have to be on here today, so to say,
Well-
we have to vote on it today, to me, is not a legitimate argument to do it. I mean, it didn't, the only reason it's on here is because Matt wanted it on here, that's why it's on here. So,
Well, it was gonna
if,
be on
and
here
then
at
if
some
you,
point.
they started the, huh?
It was gonna have to be on there. at
Well, that's
some
what I'm
point.
saying, but you heard the input from some people that said, hey, we want a little more explanation on that. It's not so much asking them. We're gonna, we're saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. It's just sort of to say change is hard and, and we know because we've done it. And a lot of times the rollout, if you call it that, or the implementation is important. And I think you need to say, okay, here's what, like I said, I'm not saying that he should change anything, but just give them, before we vote on it, just perception. And it could have been, that meeting could have been held and us put on the agenda next week with absolutely no, I mean, we'd still be
It
doing
wouldn't
our
have
job.
changed anything.
Wouldn't change anything. We'd
Necessary.
still be doing our job. It's just the process of getting it to us and getting it approved.
But in the
But I
same
wanna-
aspect, if it wouldn't have changed anything, then why put it off? I think is what Jeff is
Yes.
getting.
Yeah, so, yeah, I understand yours. It just, like I said, it's what people, well, you guys pass this and now, I mean, it's just explain it and then pass it. That's my thought. So there's a motion on the table. Who you want to say?
There is discussion.
Okay. We moved to second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I don't see any reason.
Motion passed 2-1. Okay. Next up is,
So do we have, clear direction? There's some more questions.
Yes, I will hold a meeting before bringing it back up with elected officials and district or department meetings
to get their feedback and acceptance of the
Answer their
position before
questions.
bringing it before Board of
And
Commissioners.
answer their questions.
And I think it's just from a joint meeting with department heads and elected officials, it can be any, setting a special time that works for us. You don't have to be for the other times if there's a doodle poll that goes out saying, hey, this is the best and certain ones can't make it. That's fine, but I think joint together as an elected might be the best option, just so all, I mean, be my preference, but.
Okay. Next up is 5E, final adoption of the 2024 natural hazard mitigation plan. Camera.
Good morning. Whew, hopefully this one's easier. Thank you, Chair Sykes and Commissioners. For the record, Tamara Mabbott. Bringing this back from the previous month where some of you excellent proofreaders found some errors, and my apologies for that. This entire natural hazard mitigation plan was vetted and reviewed by Oregon Emergency Management and FEMA Region 10. They didn't find those errors, so good on you for finding this, and I didn't as well. So, and part of that is we contracted through a grant for the state to develop this, and we've worked on it for a pretty protracted 2.5 years. So we read pieces and not all of it. So what's before you today is a revised, hopefully accurate resolution.
Yes.
Hopefully, yeah, okay, Valerie
updated
also,
date.
thank you. And then corrections to table 20 on page 44. Much shortened objective paragraph on page 46 about data centers. And also on page 27, the race and ethnicity table, which we double checked, and one of the federal tables that they pulled was also inaccurate. So that's what you have. Once you approve the resolution and I get it to the state office, then FEMA will give their final approval. And then Stephen is working on this with me, and so is Steve Freeland. We'll notify the cities to adopt it also, so that if there's an emergency and they need federal assistance, we have a current natural hazard mitigation plan. Also sets the stage to apply for different grant funds that are focused on natural hazard mitigation. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Chairman?
Nope. So when I was reading through page 94, 190 on the resolution, shows the adoption date is 21st day of August.
I corrected that for the version I printed off for you guys.
Okay, that's just going off of what's in the packet. And then on page 95, 190, it's chart 8. And when I was here, table 8, page 27 of the plan, the chart shows that's 54% white, narrative says 84.9% as white. I'm just not sure why the disconnect.
I saw that too, but, well, there's other demographics in there that don't quite make sense to me either. That came from the state,
I mean,
right?
But I mean,
Well, it's over 100%, right? You got 84.9 with 38.3.
Is Hispanic counted as racially white? Is that what that means?
It looks like it to me.
This is the US Census Bureau table, so I don't know.
but the narrative doesn't agree.
The
with
narrative
table.
doesn't
Yeah.
match the table. The only thing we changed was the table. Yeah, our grant expires September 30th, so we'll be out of compliance. So I'm not sure what you want to do with this. I mean, I can,
So I'll go, my next one is on page 97, it's page 46 of the plan. And I guess I would remove the second paragraph. It says Morrow County is working to establish a legacy of sustainability, but harnessing the wind, the sun, and battery storage to leave behind a cleaner, greener, and more vibrant community. I just removed that whole paragraph.
Okay.
Unless you twos see otherwise.
Our legacy is beyond that.
Then the next one is on the same page. It's the fourth paragraph on the page. And it's the first sentence under data centers. And it says, which provide data storage service to the Pacific Northwest. I'd strike the Pacific Northwest because we don't know who their customers and what area they're actually serving. I suspect it's nationwide, if not worldwide. Again, we don't know who their customers are and what they're serving. Then page 27 of the hazards plan. The paragraph is repeated.
On page 27 of the plan.
Because I went online and looked at the plan. And page on that paragraph, it says the hazards plan. I mean, the paragraph basically repeats itself.
So the second paragraph.
Well, this is
or-
page 27 of the plan.
Mhm.
It's not in our packet here. I clicked on the link that was provided and I was looking through the plan. And there's a whole paragraph that's repeated. And then again, when I clicked on the link, go to the county's website, on the column there's all kinds of the edit notes still there. And what I guess kind of got my attention there is that there was edit notes that, if we're putting it out there to the public as kind of the final plan, why are we having edit notes? But what really got because most of them were just formatting, but when the section next to the data center stuff, there is edit notes that are referencing and linking to Oregon Live
Which were deleted.
articles.
Yeah, which were deleted in this
But if I
version.
go click on the county's website and pull up this plan, those are still there.
It's the older version, I think, that is still on the website. The draft version, not the final version. Is that not right? Is that not what you found?
I don't know. That's what I found when I clicked on
Okay.
it. And why, those would be on the website. I understand, that for the people doing the plan, but what we're presenting to the public, I don't know that that's what we want to be presenting to the public.
So we will pull the older version and add the redacted version with the final. It doesn't, and it also doesn't have an adoption date on the one on the website. I am aware of that. Not
But
until.
we can label it as a draft, but again, I don't know why. Edit notes on public facing.
Yeah, we.
I would
probably
assume
shouldn't
that you
have
could
done
hide
that.
those.
So what's your pleasure? I can make those changes, remove the edited paragraph. And we'll pull the other from the website. It's been hugely challenging, not that it's an excuse, but we've had 4 different plan writers, lots of different agencies reviewing them. Lots of different versions going around, 5 different cities making edit changes, so. Yeah, I really just
So I think
focused in
that
this.
a lot of the
instance on
stuff that I
two.
pointed out would be easy to, adopt it as, other than, I don't know how we handle the table 8 and the narrative. Unless we just change the narrative to reflect what the chart actually says.
And that's easy enough.
So unless anybody else has anything, I would move for adoption or approval as presented with the edits as noted.
And I'll second that.
And I'll give Valerie my notes of what the
Okay, I also wrote them down.
So any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. Yes, Tamara? Okay. Next up is, Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund discretionary grant application fiscal year 25-27. Ben.
Good morning.
Hey.
morning.
So I've got 2 of them on the agenda again, and it's the same 2 that I brought last meeting. After further review with the county administrator, finance director, and the assistant county administrator, we dug through them a little closer, combed through them, and noticed that there were some edits that needed to be made, some adjustments. And it did impact the overall grant request. it changed both of them. One of them, it was a substantial change. So the Boardman expansion, which was our additional, moving that to a 7-day route, moving it to a, closing the head time on it. So it made more trips more frequently around. It changed the total project on that to 470,000. And that was an increase of 80,000 from what our original ask was. We'd originally asked for 390 on that one. It does, like I said, it changes our match to 94,000. If it's at the 20%, if we were to get it at the 10%, obviously it would be half of that. But what it doesn't change is we're not coming to the board and asking for funds. We'll still be able to pull those funds from our current STIF fund, formula funds, and the other formula funds that we receive through the 5311 federal grant. So the funding source doesn't change, just it changed our ask increase. And the reason on that one was because with the rising cost and the biggest component of that was labor. Those where the adjustment came from on that one. Was for some administrative costs as well as labor cost for the drivers. So that's the big change on that one. And as far as the other one, if you're ready for me to move into the next one, I will. If you have any questions about that one, I'm happy to try to answer those as well.
No, I think you addressed it. My understanding is everything's staying the same other than the dollar amounts for some operational costs.
That's correct.
So on these items, no true action. I mean, it was approved to allow us to apply. We did adjust those applications. If the commission would like to reaffirm that item. However, if we do receive the grants, you'll have an opportunity to accept the grants with the specific amounts that are awarded to the area. So whether the commission would like to take an action or just acknowledge the adjustments.
Personally, I'm just acknowledging the adjustments that changes in reflection of costs, or this is how I would summarize it. And everything else stayed the same. So. Yeah.
So the moving into the second grant application, there was some adjustments there as well. This one, however, was a reduction in cost. It came down by about 3,000. We looked at it again, same meeting where we looked over and kind of combed through the grants a little closer, looked at the numbers that were plugged in there. One of the big pieces of this one was didn't really have, when I put it together, I didn't separate the administrative cost versus the operational expense of labor. They were kind of grouped together. And it also, there was a piece in there for a very large piece for preventative maintenance. Once we looked at that a little closer and kind of refined that back down, brought it more into realistic terms. That changed this one, like I said, by a reduction of $3,000, made the total project $550,500, and total match. And this again is at 20%, barring that that it is awarded and it's not accepted at our request to be at the 10% match. It would be 110,000 would be the match request. And again, it didn't change how we intend to fund our portion of it from our STIF formula funds or anything like that. And the part of it that changed was we moved the project to reflect that a smaller amount of preventative maintenance, and we broke apart the administrative cost and the salary, driver wage operational piece of it. We broke those out to better reflect what those actual dollars were going to be spent on in the course of the grant. But But as far as the rest of the information in the grant, that did not change.
Things don't have any.
Yeah, no. Good information. Appreciate it.
It's informational. Okay, thanks, Ben.
Thank you. Y'all have a good day.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
I'm gonna call up.
Stuck.
Oh, God, all the time. I feel like, yeah, and I swear, I don't know, I think forward this new Outlook, however we have the emails now, like, I swear like 5 years ago, it was easier to do searches. I actually found what I wanted. Now I get like other ones that don't even matter. I don't know. I can never find crap, it seems like. That's why I also have to like convert all of like these, like the packet, I'll like convert the whole packet into recognizable text. So I can do searches. It takes the computer a while to do it, but it's like, that's the only thing sometime. I'll just convert the whole PDF. A little bit.
Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order. Okay, next up is our new federal floodplain regulations, Tamara.
Yeah, thank you. For the record, Tamara Mabbott, Planning Director. This memo is primarily informative, but I also ask for some policy directive. Some of our county counterparts in wetter parts of the state have been much more actively engaged with this. So it was a battle between the National Marine Fisheries Service and the Federal Emergency Management Agency based on a biological opinion that was issued. FEMA is now requiring, and Chair Sykes, you got a letter, or Administrator got a letter, requiring that counties implement some interim measures, which they call pre-implementation compliance measures for mitigating any impacts to endangered species. We had started down the path of mapping streams with ESA species, and it doesn't matter because it applies to all streams that are within that have a mapped flood insurance rate map area. So what FEMA has asked all counties and cities with floodplains to do is to adopt some interim measures before 2027, when the FEMA has a final implementation plan ready. And the options are prohibit all new development in the floodplain, adopt a model ordinance, which FEMA can provide. Not sure we understand it yet. And then, or the third one is to require permit applicants to develop a floodplain habitat assessment documenting that the property will achieve no net loss. And my observation and some of my counterparts in other counties, option 3 seemed like the best option. Option 2 would require an amendment to our plan. It would only be interim. There are problems with all 3 options. The first option, prohibit, that just sounds really draconian. I didn't think that you would support that at all, nor would I. you've probably heard this at your AOC meetings. Some counties continue to push back, and included in the packet was a letter from our congressional delegation and a copy of the original letter that we were mailed. We could talk about this for a long time. We actually currently do not have a CFM, a certified floodplain manager. Landon was on that track to complete that. I did it years ago before they did certification. I just figured it'd be nicer for a junior staff person who's gonna stick around longer to have that certification. So Daisy's at a training this week, which won't get the certification, but at least it's some additional training in the county. So happy to answer any questions.
Okay. So you recommended 3, didn't you?
I did. Oh, we could pursue number 2.
And what's it cost to do one of those?
I think a lot of money. I mean,
Okay.
none of these options seem very clear.
Mm.
Option 3 also seemed to have a little bit more, as long as we document that there's no less net loss, there's a little more subjectivity and flexibility for landowners who do want to build in the floodplain. And I also included in here, our whole county only has 9 policies with active flood insurance. It doesn't affect very many property owners, has the potential to affect more. And as a practical matter, when people come in and they want to build close to a stream, we did that 100 years ago because it's flat land and you wanted to be close to water. We always pull out the map and say, if you move it 10 feet, for example, you'll be out of the floodplain and it will result in much lower costs for your development. And today, since FEMA has ramped up floodplain regulations, any property that has a bank loan is required to have flood insurance. And it's high. So if you choose to build in the floodplain today, as opposed to being grandfathered in when those maps were adopted in the late 70s, the rates are even much higher. So most people say, oh gosh, I don't want to invest in that.
Well, we definitely don't want to lose our insurance program, but, okay, for instance, isn't the mill site in the floodplain?
Yes.
Aren't they moving some dirt around there? And I thought here it is, aren't they not, nobody's supposed to move any dirt around in the floodplain now, doing this?
I don't know. We don't regulate moving dirt. So if the port wants to be moving the dirt, and I did send them this information so they know. I sent it to Mark and Lisa and Jacob. So that's really on them. If a new structure was to be developed, we would be permitting it. It also said they're in about 2/3 the way through the process to have a map amended to remove that I don't know, half of that property or so from the regulated floodplain.
Okay,
And that's what's called the mitigation. So they had to mitigate
So
something.
there's habitat of several species and the resident killer whales. And, of course, those, haven't seen those in Willow Creek, but are there other?
So I can explain that.
Small.
It's the sneaky, it's the fact that the salmon are in depletion, that the orcas don't have anything to eat in the ocean. So they are regulating, this is just the EFA side.
Okay.
And I agree, but the salmon have to spawn, reproduce and make it to the ocean for the orcas to eat them, so they don't starve to death. My answer to that is start eating sea lions,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
they chow down big time.
but I can't make a whale do anything.
Oh, the charter boat does carry 30/30 on it.
Yeah.
And that, you know, take care of the sea whale. So is this aimed at just those 2, well, not 2 species, but it says it's not specific on the several species and then the resident killer whales. So you have to identify whether whatever those specific species are
Our ESA listed species as a
Are
plumber
not-
skillet.
are not in your development area?
The way I understand it, and I am not a biologist, is that the cumulative effect of all these streams that go into the Columbia River and go into the ocean is what's causing that life cycle challenge. So we don't have to, as planners or landowners or developers, identify the species, just that the work in that floodplain would not affect.
Yeah, and that has to be proven, but that's what I was getting at, what's the cost?
Oh,
No, I mean, I'm not asking you for the cost.
Oh,
I'm just trying to get at, what does a developer have to do? And I realize we're not gonna have an option here. I'm just trying to get out in front of it is, and we don't have a heck of a lot of development in floodplains anyway.
no, yeah.
So what would a developer have to do to meet the qualifications of no species in your floodplains if they're trying to develop?
It's
Is that an
not very
acceptable-
clear.
Seems to
It's
be
not clear,
irrelevant.
but we talk about it, I've seen those things, they just seem expensive. And
Mhm.
don't, it doesn't, they're not, that, in this one, there's not much there to prove, is there? I mean, there's not any endangered species in Willow Creek,
Well,
which is the only area that's gonna be affected.
But that's irrelevant. It's the water that's relevant, not the speed.
That's what I was getting, I was
Right.
downstream.
Yes.
Mhm.
All right.
So it's just like the fish. They gotta make it to the ocean for the orcas to eat them. That's why the orcas are listed. Same with the water. The water that goes from one watershed to another
Okay.
that may have an ESA, which
so they're
Columbia is an ESA listed river.
They're looking at our water up here to impact way downriver.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, any other questions or Tamara on this?
There's no option for.
Well, actually, I think some counties are maybe, you can direct me to not do anything and we can do that. I think some counties are pursuing that pretty heavily.
I thought that defaults to,
Do nothing in the false
Number
yeah,
two.
prohibit new development. Oh,
It could default to number one,
We don't want.
but we're not taking a deliberate action to prohibit. Honestly, there's a lot of unknowns about this. I wasn't even sure I should share it with you. Matt and I talked about it briefly. But again, I think it's a pretty major policy decision to say, should we pick the one, do we comply with the directive? And our congressional delegation is questioning whether or not FEMA even has the authority to issue that directive. I just thought we'd comply to the best of our ability, and it seems like option 3 would give the landowner and staff the most ability if they choose to develop in the floodplain.
I don't see it impacting Morrow County much, but I mean, at all. I mean, not at all, but in very rare case, but
Very, yeah.
then it would just come down to what kind of statement do you wanna make? Like Jeff says, don't adopt any of them. And if it's in limbo, whether or not FEMA has authority, then maybe that's the route to go. But you're recommending 3 here.
I did, maybe it's a position for council or it's really policy. I mean, you can adopt one as an interim measure and join your colleagues from around the state who are pushing back on this.
So that was my question. If we adopt option 3, but then realize that that's still giving too much power to FEMA to do maybe not the right thing for us, can we go back on that?
Sure. Because it's an interim measure and they're in the
Interim,
process
okay.
of adopting final formal measures, which will lead to a code amendment.
Well, if I remember right, as I was reading this, if we do nothing, does that jeopardize the 9 people that do have flood insurance? Does that jeopardize their ability to have flood
Have
insurance?
flood insurance.
That's my concern. It's not clear, but that is my concern. Yeah.
So that's the
The only.
safe route.
Yeah.
Is number 3, which seems like the least burdensome,
Mm-hmm.
and it protects those individuals.
I'm not sure if I have the ability to check and see who has flood insurance. I think that's proprietary. I could probably tell you based on some old permits, but some of them are old. And the Kinzu Mill site is pretty significant for southern part of the county.
And for what they're trying to accomplish down there too.
Mhm.
It's a little different with the fairgrounds because they're not like, they're just partial use.
Right.
They are, because then some of the buildings in the fairgrounds are floodplain.
Yeah, and we do have some development plan down there.
So it
Hopefully
could- it
outside
could
of the
affect that as
floodplain.
well.
We know about that.
Yeah, so I mean, those are your areas in the south side of the county that are
Mhm.
considered.
There's a couple properties on Butter Creek, couple on Willow Creek.
Okay, Judge, what's your pleasure on this one?
Well, I'll motion that we adopt option 3 in the interim.
Second.
Moving second to adopt option 3 on the federal floodplain regulation. They moved second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion carried. Okay. All right, next up is the consideration of weed abatement fee for energy related project. That's me. The reason I asked for this to be on there is because I guess I could go back a ways as we're talking to Corey and he was getting slammed with all this new, mainly solar farms and stuff. Well, all of them coming in, so we had to do something. So we kicked around in ideas about what to do, and I had been talking to Ryan Hill with Next Energy's next solar wagon trail. I mentioned to him that we wanted to do something about weeds. At first he was a little resistant, I think. Anyway, he was good. He's good with it. He was good to work with on this. I gotta say that. So we got some figures from Matt and on what the cost would be to handle wagon trails, 7,450 acres. The 113. So I gave that to Ryan. He came back, and then also I told him, well, our employees come in and they usually ask for an increase in pay every year. He says, well, what do you think about 3%? So we added 3% increase every year. And he came back and said they'll do 120,000. So they'll do 120,000 for nothing, for just to address weeds on wagon trail, plus a 3% increase every year. That's part. They have proposed their pilot program. The pilot's pretty simple. It's set by the state, $7,000 per megawatt is what they pay. So, but we added it as a separate additional amount in the pilot. So
If it's a state agreement, can we add to it as a county?
It's not a state agreement, it's a set amount by the state.
Correct. Yeah,
So
that's
we're
what we
just-
can accept on there. They can apply for the pilot program. I haven't looked into it as much to see that question, but the question, it sounds like goes the idea of if the statute talks about, here's the amount for this, can we add additional items?
Right.
Just an example being, let's say for us to say, oh, for the pilot, we want to do the donation to the schools every year. Is that allowed? And I haven't checked to see. It might
Yeah,
not be
I'm not
good.
against it. I just wanna make sure we don't do something we shouldn't do here and then say, oh,
Or we
you can't do that.
It required in the future, because I think the example, so it sounds like in this case, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the companies in favor saying, yep, maybe we can do this, with our process being, well, in the future, we want to apply this to other people that do the same thing or the same kind of projects. Don't want the situation where we say, all right, well, we're gonna do the pilot and you have to pay this weed because everyone else does. And they come back and say, we don't have to. We don't do that, it's not required, and then kind of put this one company in a bind where the other ones we can't follow through. Is that kind of the concern?
Yeah,
you're
that's
raising?
kind of,
Chair, Mike Roman raised his hand.
Yeah, Mike?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I kind of view this additional requirement in that pilot agreement very similar to SIP agreements where the only statutory thing is the community service fee. And, we add in any additional payments that are binding through that contract in order for them to receive the exemption. So I don't see a problem with adding that extra requirement. But council, absolutely, please vet that.
thanks, Mike.
Okay, so anyway, that's fine, we got that taken care of on that one project, but I've been thinking about it for a while. We actually held a work session on this that it never really got resolved. Is I'd like to have a set amount where if a new solar farm or wind project comes looking to locate here, as we have a set amount where we say, okay, we want you to pay additional fee of this much for weed, you know, and then have that somehow earmarked for the weed department.
If we, just, if we do a set amount, I mean, all these projects could be variably different, right? Terrain could be different.
Well,
So if we do a set amount, is that gonna handcuff us in an
well,
area
no,
that
this
may
is,
cost more?
yeah, no, here's the thing is with this is we don't mitigate, we don't take care of the weeds. We just, Corey's getting slammed for
Right.
compliance.
Okay.
So the terrain doesn't make much, any difference as far as I know. I mean,
Well, if he's
because we're
gotta
not
go in-
going out there to spray.
No, but we will go out and do compliance and inspect, right? Or do we wait for
Just-
complaints?
No, well, I don't know about, I gotta talk to him about that. But I know that he was spending, he just said, I'm spending all this time.
Right.
I said, okay, what do we gotta do to help you out and get this done? So he,
And that was, so if he's gotta go actually physically go there, so terrain can be an issue with it,
well, yeah, but
some-
then boy, if you get into doing that, then you gotta define
the
what
difference.
kind of terrain is gonna fit what charge. I mean, on this particular project, it's $16 an acre. For the solar. I talked to Mike yesterday about this and a little bit, and, what do we do about SIP? Well, that doesn't make sense because, the wind project is huge and they're farming in between and, I mean, you know, $16. I don't know, maybe you wanna do acreage I mean, first of all, I guess I have to ask you, do you wanna do this? Do you
What?
want to come up with a set amount so that anybody, or a pretty good amount, that anybody that's coming in, whether they go to the planning department or Matt, whoever they are, Mike, they would say, okay, we're gonna have a weed fee attached to this, it's gonna be $16 an acre. So is that something you want, or do you wanna? Cause I heard one person say, well, you can go talk to Corey, Corey shouldn't be dealing with what it's gonna cost. That's
Right.
not his purview, you know,
But I think that we
That's something-
need to have it negotiable because there are circumstances that could change it to where, 16 may not cover it.
so we will go to Eric and get a fee an amount every time. And then he would have to go review the terrain.
Perhaps. I
And
mean,
then
I think that's something you need to know, better to be proactive than reactive.
No, and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not saying either way. I just wanna make sure you just walk it through.
I mean, you
so
can
that-
find a lot of that out. I'm sure Stephen could look at it on a map and tell you whether or not it's gonna be difficult terrain or if it's gonna be.
So basically, you wouldn't even have to do that. You just have to tell Eric. And give us, okay, this one came in at this size, give us a figure. And,
Yeah, cause if it's way out in the middle of nowhere, you can have more time involved in getting there. If it's hard to access because there's private property between you and them, I mean, obviously we can access all this, but. I mean, I just wanna be careful of having a set fee that may not be enough
Gotcha.
under certain circumstances.
well, I wanna make sure
I
that
think
that
a weed
doesn't,
abate, I think a weed abatement is, having a fee for weed abatement is something we seriously need to do.
yeah, yeah.
But putting a set fee, I'm a little concerned
okay,
about.
okay. Then the other option would just be get an amount from Eric every time on every project. Okay,
Yeah, or make it
So-
negotiable. I don't know.
no, and then you propose it, just like we did with that, so, you know.
Mike's.
Yeah, Mike?
Well, I was just going to say, like I told Dave yesterday, I had a complaint from a property owner a couple weeks ago on the Wheat Ridge Wind Project for puncture vine on the access roads for maintaining the towers. And my thought was, well, they're driving from one access road onto a county road, spreading the puncture vine along the county road onto the next landowner access road. So, I don't necessarily see a problem with a set fee, because if it's too much for the compliance aspect of it, there's probably ought to be some funds in there for spraying the county roads that the maintenance vehicles are driving up and down and spreading those weeds as well. I see Dave's thought process in doing like a per acre basis for a solar project, but I illustrated that that might not work for wind. I would just start with a set fee. If a project maybe have a size threshold on how many megawatts um, the solar or the wind project is, and if it's small, like a 10 megawatt project, maybe you discount that down some, but any large projects, just charge a fee. It's just part of the deal. It's part of coming to Morrow County. And we'll use that money to, fund, help fund the weed department with both compliance and for, spraying weeds along county roads.
My concern was more coming in under than over with the fee, coming in with not enough money versus too much money.
Well, yeah, Tim.
I just wanted to add, I'm so glad that you're having this discussion, and Corey and Eric aren't here today, but I've been involved with a couple of other discussions. Whatever the formula and the methodology for charging a fee, that's really out of my purview, but the importance of having a fee, I think, is really, really high. And underscore, if it's a project the county permits, we'll say file a weed abatement program and comply with Corey's recommendations. If they're charging a fee, Corey can manage that, maybe adding staff. And Corey can tell you, playing catch up is the worst part, because it's not just catch up, it's compounding for years, especially with, goat heads or puncture vines. The state has a similar approach where those large developments have to charge a weed abatement fee, and we've asked formally twice on letters you've signed to have a set amount, and the state won't require that as a condition of the state permit. So we're back to where we are. You've got an operating plan, you've got a weed abatement plan, and it's up to Corey to monitor it. Daisy and I attended a FSEC meeting in Hermiston a few weeks ago, and then I was back on the next day. One of our companies who's under construction right now has violated this and lots of other conditions. They have 2 compliance officers for the entire state. And even if they have a compliance person, then what? You shut the project down? And FSEC has yet to sanction any development for non-compliance with conditions. So to your point that you directed staff before, it's the state's permit, let them do compliance, they don't. So whatever the formula is, we make that a condition before we issue our land use permit. I know Matt has it on his agenda to update the fee schedule because there are other things to update too. That would be the simplest thing. And again, whatever formula you think is right, you could even have a fund for that set aside. And then if Corey doesn't spend all that, you could rebate it. That would be complicated because again, he's currently just a one-man show over there, but it is not getting taken care of the way we have it without it. And philosophically, it really should be part of the regulatory process, not part of the tax incentive process. That's just Tamara sharing it. I'm really glad that you caught it as part of was either one of the SIPs or the pilot program, but that's after they've complied. I mean, and once you go down that path, then what part of the regulatory process do you ignore and add to a tax abatement program? And it's the regulatory and planning piece where I function. It's the tax abatement piece where you function.
And your hands are tied in the regulatory.
Absolutely.
So
I
it
just
has to
can tell
come-
you
so
for
it has to come in
certain,
from the side.
yep, for certain, it's being overlooked. So whatever formula you come up with, it's better than what we have right now.
The reason we went with the SIP for one reason, and Mike can address this too, is, for instance, when the commission wanted to have the lighting that, motion
The
lighting,
tower. Mhm.
they made that part of the SIP agreement. And then when the company did not come through and it wasn't there, I think it was there was a company that did the lighting was separate from NextEra, they did, or whoever.
Mhm.
And they weren't getting them to work correctly and they weren't responding. So they had the option to say, hey, you're not gonna get your SIP,
Abatement.
there's a nice big hammer there that
Very,
they can't
yeah.
ignore you. That's why if you include it in the tax abatement program, hey, you're not
Yes, ma'am.
complying with you're not gonna get your tax break if you don't.
Comply
In this case, it's not specific action, it's a dollar amount. And then with this, with the lights, it was a specific action. It wasn't pay this amount, you know? But that's one of the reasons it's nice to have it in there.
For sure.
And I think Mike's got.
Yeah,
something to
Mike?
say. Probably have to.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I think part of the reason behind this condition and that fee is to offset any cost of the county for, the regulatory condition. So, you know, in my mind, if the project isn't doing their job of weed abatement, then, the county sends their weed guy out and sprays it and bills the company. Or uses that money to help offset that. I don't know, but I totally agree with what you're saying. They're forcing us to put this condition in a tax abatement program because the state's not policing their own rules.
It's an unfunded mandate.
This here they pay attention to.
Worse
because-
than that.
It's worse than unfunded mandate, right?
So,
Right. And even if the state was saying, hey, you gotta, spray your weeds, the company would still have to foot the bill for that. You know, but instead of, I guess we're looking at being proactive that, hey, we'll deal with it. We'll bring it up. And here is the funding behind that. So I don't know, just food for thought, I guess.
Just to clarify, my only concern was making sure that we had the formula correct. That we
right,
weren't
well,
coming up short of, them
Right.
still having to fund
right.
some of this stuff.
Yeah, so, I mean, we don't have to do it, not asking you to set a fee today, I'm just asking to see if you wanna proceed with that. And under what conditions, and there it is, and I mean, Eric and Corey are the ones that are gonna have to hammer this out, like I said, we kinda tried before, but then it got stalled. And now we got another one, I met with that other renewable, so here they come, and I told him up front, and that's what I like to be able to do. If I'm involved, is say, give them a heads up, say, okay, there's gonna be a weed fee, rather than bringing stuff in late in the game, to me, true, it's our deal, we can do it, but I don't like to do business that way. I like to tell them up front, hey, there's gonna be a weed fee. And that way they can tell their bosses, but it'd be nice to say, okay, what's this next one? Next week coming up. 4,500, I don't know, better not quote that. Is say, so much an acre, or take the maps and have them say, we're gonna quote it to you, however you guys see it. So either way, I'd like to kind of move forward with Corey, Eric. And get a set fee one way or the other, either or a procedure.
So one of the concerns when this came up originally was one of the solar farms that exists wrote a letter that claimed it was a money grab. Right? So, and if you do overcharge and end up with excess money, it could come across as a money
Yeah.
grab.
And I think it's, Plan Director Abbott has mentioned to me just during breakthrough that there is some statute we talked about we can't be doing fees that are more like a or like a benefit, like a.
Recover costs.
Yeah, just recover costs, we have to have more of a set process or a basis for the amount that we do, which we probably could do. I could see the idea of saying, hey, here's the research we've done for what weed abatement is in our area and this type of soil grounds, and it costs this much per year, per acre.
We
So that-
have to have that?
Oh,
Who
no,
says
no.
We have to.
No, I'm saying that the state's law, and Tamara mentioned this to me before, that when we have a fee, it has to be based on recovering, as basis for recovering the cost of us actually doing it, not as a money maker project. And so it doesn't have to be like, oh, here's the exact bill. It can be more that even if it's a flat fee amount, it could be based upon, we've looked into it, this is maybe the average cost or so, go up, it could be above or less, but here's a rounds of basis, and here's the analysis we went to get to that. So that's where the law was just more the rule saying can't be used as a more of a money making aspect.
Yes.
We had that issue before. Gosh, sometimes we were worried about that when we were doing enterprise, or what was it in the planning department? We had a flat fee for the fee amounts for certain megawatt projects. We had to try to,
The surcharge, yeah, we
Yeah.
actually reduced that, yeah.
yeah, because that was an issue. We had a certain surcharge saying, hey, this, doing these projects for wind projects, I think is what it was at first, wasn't it? Certain,
It started with wind.
Yeah. that these cost the planning department this much, so there's a cost for the permit, or the, I think what it was. And we did it on a per megawatt basis of the project too. And that was one of the concerns we had. We had a basis for it, and we've reduced it with time, so it hasn't been an issue. I just mentioned is that we had to have some basis of why this was the estimated cost.
Well, okay, on
That's-
this one here that we presented to, Eric did send me a spreadsheet
Oh, that's fine, yeah.
with the labor and the vehicle
Mm-hmm.
costs, okay? So if we went to him and said, okay, give us an estimate on whether it's per acre, per 100 acres, or whatever, on a wind, based on what, like Mike says, the roads and stuff, him and Corey, then present some kind of spreadsheet or justification for it.
Correct, and that's, we just keep them the records for when they say, you're just making up numbers. You know, this is wrong.
But
this
you're
is
showing
wrong."
how many miles of roadway you have to spray and you know what it costs per
Correct.
road mile to spray, then that's one thing. That's my concern. I just wanna make sure we have a real number that's not gonna be in excess, so we're
Sure.
getting accused of using this as a money grab.
Yeah, we don't do.
So again, is this Corey going out and making sure they're in compliance, or Corey going out and actually?
Spray and wait.
Yes, because, you know, when you bring up it costs so much per mile to spray, I don't think that the county's in the applicator business.
Right. Except on
We,
county roads.
we are in the monitoring business.
So,
So how many hours a month, week, year would Corey spend to go out and make sure that they are monitoring?
compliance, yeah.
And if it doesn't get taken care of and the county has to spray
Well,
it, then there's a fee for whatever.
Okay,
that
what-
is.
what- for that.
Well, then we find the landowner and they go hire the company to
Company.
spray.
Or depending if it's tied. And these are some of the nuances where we talk about this in the group, is that if it's tied to the pilot program, then it gets tied, kind of like we did with the lights for wind tower project, tying to the tax abatement, saying, oh, you were getting this benefit, this was the set amount of statutes, that you're not complying with the pilot program agreement we have in place that you signed off on. If you don't correct it, we're gonna go back and charge you normal tax.
Okay.
That's what it'd be. That's, if it's a part of the, that's the penalty we can provide. Not really a separate fine, because it's not really a nuisance, unless it's tied into like a nuisance statute or something else. It's more as a part of this agreement, you were getting this tax abatement benefit. Since you're not complying with this additional term you agreed to, we're gonna tax you normal. And I think that's how I just explained it, be tied in. We still, I'd have to double check and look at it more, but that'd be the process if we follow the same ideas as our
So
agreements.
what do you guys think? You wanna get together with Eric and Corey and think about, do you wanna have a set fee we can tell renewables when they come in that there's gonna be this fee, or do you wanna do it at all and just go along?
So I think that, you know, as my understanding is that, you know, Corey is spending time making sure that they're in compliance, so it's monitoring. So we should come up with a idea of how much time he thinks each project is going to take to monitor.
Right. No,
A
that's
year.
it, yeah, no, it's not.
And-
spraying, yeah.
And that could be based off of an acreage. Because even with a wind, even though a tower only disturbs, that's per tower, quarter acre, you know, and you can figure out how many acres of road, you know,
Yeah.
are impacted, and that's what he's going to be looking at. Because it'll take so long to drive and monitor so much per acre.
Okay. So you wanna proceed on that lines?
Yeah. But I think that we, again, you know, kind of to the point that Justin's making too, is we need to have a justification of what that rate is.
Yeah. We'll bring it back here. Okay. Okay, next up is J, discussion developing county loss policy. That was something I put on here too, is I asked Justin after our last incident, and this doesn't have anything to do with employee theft. This is, what if someone steals from the county? And this is any kind of theft. You know, what we just had, somebody breaks into an office. Do the employees and staff and everyone have is it in policy what they have to do when that's discovered? You know, Justin, you want to reiterate, it's not
Yeah.
right.
That's correct. And that's the idea is particularly if the county has been a victim of, fraud, that we think about with computers, right? With IT, some trying to get information from us, logins, passwords, but really when Chair Sykes brought this up, one of the things that stood out to me was, gosh, I know in my gut what I do if I think I'm missing a projector or something, but is it in a policy? No, it isn't. And so I started just thinking to myself also, I was like, gosh, if one of my employees said, oh yeah, I've been missing that computer or whatever, it may not computer, but another expensive item in my office disappeared and I didn't know where it went to, but it's not my job to keep track of this, so I don't care. I'm like, oh, you're in trouble. You definitely, you get penalized for that as an employee. And I think, there are policies in place. And I appreciate, I think, it was Human Resources, number one, and Matt, I think, forward on some of the policies that comply that we have right now. And most of them tied in so far to if the employee is getting arrested or has contact while on the job. And the other was some of the property, if the person does remote work, they sign that agreement for remote work. But I didn't see one yet for if a person, if you're missing property or if you're a victim of a crime, what steps are you supposed to take? And so that's where Chair Sykes brought that up. I just kind of looked around too to say, hey, is there other parts in other counties I could see in Oregon here? I didn't see that came up. Like, of course, I could be missing them. I'm trying to do certain searches and I probably missed something, but a lot of them were almost like a certain provision of a policy saying, if you've been convicted of, or if you stole property from your county, that can lead to termination. That's kind of like the idea. In other policies in Oregon, nothing came up of saying, if you believe something is missing or stolen, or you've been a victim of fraud, what steps you take. Do you talk to your department head first? If it's a certain thing, do you talk to the administrator? How does that go to the Board of Commissioners? What law enforcement agency is supposed to investigate? Is there supposed to be a report submitted? And those also kind of tie into even insurance claims. I know, at least in my separate hat, DA office hat, I get public records requests all the time from insurance companies saying, hey, we need a copy of this police report because this victim is making a claim. And so I just started thinking about it more, saying, yeah, that's kind of, I can see that being important, is the county as a victim getting a police report or having a case number benefit that also. So we don't have a proposed language on here, but I did find some from other states, examples that talk about, and I don't think it made it in the package. I sent it in later, so that's why we can forward this on for another discussion next time. But it is some decent language out there. The hard part is I can look at policies about workplace theft policies, reporting. There's some great ones out there, but I can't say I know how this ties into human resource aspects or even union negotiations. I'm not if a person doesn't follow the policy. If the person says, as a policy says, employees must report theft, and then this employee doesn't, I don't want to mess something up on the human resource or union side where they say, yeah, I saw that policy, but I disregarded it.
Not all our policies have punishment in them.
True.
That they're not followed. I mean,
But-
what happens when you violate other policies? It just says you shall, it doesn't say you'll be, does it, do it?
I think because they would have a basis, if an employee doesn't follow a policy they've signed off on. Correct me, I don't want to step on any shoes that the person who knows is right back there more. I think there are consequences for an employee who doesn't policy.
Every
Yeah.
policy has
Yeah,
consequences?
Supervisor can definitely discipline for a policy violation, any policy violation.
You have levels of policy violations, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, if it's first offense or.
Theft,
you
the
know.
theft thing, I mean, it might circle right back around to the employee stole it, but I'm talking about and I think we know what we're talking about here. It's the initial, somebody comes to work, finds the office and broke into, do they just go, no?
What are the steps they're supposed to take?
Yeah, exactly, and thinking about insurance, thinking about notifying law enforcement, thinking about notifying superiors, however, what is that supposed to be, you know? And what do you report? You know, I mean, oh, there's a wrench missing, you know? I mean, how low do you go? I guess?
Right, well, that's the,
What do
did you misplace the wrench? Did somebody steal the wrench?
Yeah.
Did,
Lindsay, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the situation. But if there's a policy that says if something is, you know, stolen or missing, you need to report it to this person. And then somebody has a county car stolen when it's under their possession and they decide not to report it and cover it up, then it would be a policy violation. So it does relate back to the employment aspect as well. But I mean, there's certain situations, it all depends on what it is. If they have a stapler missing and they don't report it, it's not gonna
What do you have
No.
another person?
be a big deal.
You have another restriction.
I haven't seen a lot of policies in this way. I have seen theft or theft loss policies where it says if something is of a certain level, it needs to be reported up to the board or whatnot to make them aware of that. I mean, generally it's dealt with by the supervisor and department levels.
Yeah, but if you want something reported to law enforcement, wouldn't that have to be in the policy somewhere?
I would suggest that you put a level. If a stapler's gone, do we need to report that to the police?
Yeah.
If, you know, if it's over $500, you know, you're starting to talk about things. You know, and the other issue is in the past, the county took on a very aggressive asset inventory management where everything was labeled. We backed off that just because of the cumbersome of it and just the resources available to do that.
Yeah.
And so you gotta weigh that out and just say, okay, what level are we doing, you know?
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, you know, a recognizable theft, you know,
Yeah.
not inventory or nothing like that, but like I said, somebody comes to work and sees their pickup has been windows smashed and the radio's gone. You know, I mean, that's not, you know, it's obvious. What do? Do they tell their supervisor? And what does their supervisor do? Does he tell you? And then what do? Do you tell the sheriff? See what I'm saying? And then it connects up with our insurance. Do you have something you wanted to say on that, Kevin?
Yeah, so I wonder if it's a policy or just a standard operating procedure that has a chain of events for a known theft or a known loss. Is that where if you know that this was a theft, here's a process to follow. If you know that there was a, you know, vandalism or crime committed that impacted the county, you know, here's the process to follow. Because I don't know if that needs to be a policy or just a published standard procedure. Just a suggestion there. Because there seemed to be some concern about it.
You got anything to borrow from your other large organizations?
I'd have to look to see if we do have a theft policy.
yeah, I mean,
But
yeah,
standard operating procedure, are we splitting hairs between policy and standard operating procedure?
I don't think so. I think,
I mean,
I mean, I guess it maybe to some extent.
potato.
Takes the word policy off of it, so if there's apprehension about that word, then
Do you think it should be in writing?
I do.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, either way.
It should be just
So to
common
me,
sense.
I would give a letter policy.
So you want to instruct the staff, able to do something?
Yeah, and one recommendation, if the Board of Commissioners is interested in going down this path, if they entertain a motion to direct county council to work on drafting a policy regarding this. To present the Board of Commissioners, my plan would probably also be to probably work with human resources, forward on copies to them and department heads, just to say, hey, here's what we're looking at, I'm probably missing something, and maybe they can think of something else that I might have missed. And that'd be the plan. If once they look it over, just bring it back to the board for consideration, and then changes at that point too. So it just gives me drafting an option.
So how about this, Justin? It's a little bit different. How about we can ask Matt with working with department heads and he runs it by you for the legal aspect before.
Yeah, I can forward him all the stuff I've gathered so far. Yeah, the researches and stuff I've worked on. I can do that if
You
needed.
want a motion on that?
Because I know, you know, you got plenty of things, not that Matt doesn't have plenty of things, but you know, in my mind, that's kind of hers purview is to
Not a problem.
draft some of that and run it by you for legal aspect and.
You put that in the motion.
and Lindsay has come.
drafting one right now.
Oh, okay. Well, you'll work with Matt to, so I will make the motion to direct staff to investigate coming up with a policy for theft or loss or
Theft and loss.
it's kind of the same.
And
Well,
values,
Well, they'll come up with the dollar
the
value.
values, yeah. So let them.
So
do that.
we're giving them a large blanket to determine what they think is the appropriate.
Okay.
And if we want more information, we can let them
Yeah.
know
Exactly.
when
Once
you
they,
come with the draft. Does that work, Dave? Is that kind of what you were looking for, or are you looking for something different?
It brings back up, yeah. No. Okay, do I hear a second?
Yeah, I'll second it. Well, yeah. So can you get that motion?
Um,
I was like, why did you ask that now?
we direct-
Motion to direct staff to investigate coming up with a policy for theft and loss.
Yeah, that's probably good enough. Yeah, I'll second that.
Bring it back to the board.
Yeah.
Okay. Been moved and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, that finishes our business items. Department reports, accounts payable monthly, and that's pretty self-explanatory. Sheriff's Office monthly report. Do we have anybody on Zoom for the sheriff? No.
They did present their stats.
Yeah, they did. We had a written report. Treasurer's monthly report. Planning Department monthly report.
She had a conflict. She asked if her written report can stand.
Yeah, right, okay. County Administrator update. Matt, it's all yours.
So, just wanted to give a few updates on items that are going on. We have, of course, the ASAs have been assigned. Health District took over the south, seems to be running well. The northeast, I'm going to reach out and get a confirmation on roster. Conversations with them end of last week shows that they should be ready to contractually fulfill their requirements for the northeast. And so we'll confirm that and have it get going. Again, just a heartfelt appreciation of Boardman Fire Rescue District for covering the interim for that. They've been very gracious on making sure that there's coverage while during this transitionary period, and we look forward to complete adoption of the ASAs. We will be looking to do our first advisory committee for the ASAs. We'll be reaching out, and I just need to nail down the dates with Robin, as she is the chairperson for that committee. We do have all the members vetted out on those, though. Circuit Courthouse, we are working on it. I just put out a request so we can start getting the site and the space use studies taken care of while we're waiting for the geotech that has been ordered. The half report we found that was done for the transit just doesn't work for the siding, and it's been 2 years, and so they've recommended that we go ahead and proceed with the new one. And so they're getting that, and we should be able to take care of that in due order. Hopefully by October 2nd, I'll have some definitive schedules in that if meetings haven't started that already on there. I did attend a fire recovery meeting that was held by the state this Monday. It was mainly for the stuff within county administration and the municipalities and that for responding to the fire. We didn't have a lot of things for a lot of direction for users, landowners, cattle grazers or whatnot that were impacted by that fire. So we're going to be looking into that for a little bit more information as we go through there. Other thing, just kind of a minor note, we are updating the AV for your boardroom in Hefner. We received the monitors. What we're planning to do is get through the meeting on the 2nd and then have them start. So we'll have it all ready for the November meeting, because just technically there's a lot of adjusting in that to get taken care of. And so that'll be a marked improvement. You'll be able to read the screen with clarity, which will be nice. And there will be 2 screens. So some good viewing as we go through that.
with that, was just wanted to touch base on, historically, we do a meeting in October for, up at the OHV. One of the things is I've talked with them, they feel like they've figured out the Wi-Fi and that, but with the action items we have during October, we're wondering if we have our regular, board meetings and then possibly have a field trip up to one of the parks to check that out and kind of have a touring work session where we go up, take a look, bring a box lunch, check out. We usually go to OHV, but go to Cuts Forth, see that, or even make a loop and check out some of the fire damage areas, if that would be a value, or if the commission would like to do the traditional BOC meeting up at OHV. And so that was just an inquiry from you, from me to you, to see how you'd like to proceed on that. So
I'll be okay with basically I'll call it a field trip.
Work session.
okay,
Because it
To be
sounds
fair,
like,
I've already done that, so.
maybe you can lead us. for us.
Extensively, well, I can do that, I do know where all the fire ends and where it all, I've been through that whole thing, so, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a long day, though.
It would be.
Cutsforth to Anson right through the 21 road is about a 2-hour drive.
Mhm. So if
that
we
doesn't
wanted to
include the-
Cutsworth or just to head down to direct fire damaged areas, we could just do an OHV Anson Wright area and see some of the fire areas. So,
because it sounds like, the agendas maybe for the regular meetings are gonna be pretty filled up, so.
the second, we'll have quite a bit of things with audit and that. The 16th, we may have a land use hearing, so I wouldn't want to jog that one. So we are going to be looking at some busy meetings.
Sounds good.
So
David, you have comments?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay.
That's okay. I'm open to anything, whatever everybody works out. Fine with, yeah. Okay. What you got?
that's all I've got for right now.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Any correspondence?
No correspondence.
Commissioners reports. Jeff, you got anything?
So let's see, so last week went over to LeGrand for the NEAC meeting, which is the Northeast Area Commission of Transportation. One of the things that would be interesting for Morrow County is that Irrigon had submitted a proposal for a bridge replacement, I think it is. It's the bridge at Mortar Lane crossing Ray Creek. And it sounds like it's been approved, and ODOT people this fall are going to be doing what they call a scoping deal. So they come out, they take a look at it. We'll be meeting with Eric, whoever else to go take a look at that.
Is that a full replacement?
I'm not sure,
Oh.
but I suspect it is, but I don't know that.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is sometimes with a full replacement, it's difficult to have a secondary bypass
Yeah.
while it's being fully replaced. If you're just doing a repair, you can cut half of it off and maintain travel, but it's a full replacement. Sometimes
Small little
It's a
bridge.
small
It's like
bridge.
what I remember
The-
going across that on combines and stuff, and it was always a scary.
They'd have
thing.
to go down Gooseberry down. the road.
Yeah, okay.
But, so that was interesting there. Last Friday was the CREA meeting, Community Renewable Energy Association. They talked about legislation that they will be supporting coming up, what they be interested in there. They're still in the process of putting out advertisements for a new executive director. Mike MacArthur's planning on retiring come November. And yesterday was supposed to be a CDA meeting, and we got moved to Friday, and Dave's going to go for me. And so yesterday also I spent in the morning with deposition prep for the CDA, the lawsuit that's been brought on by Umatilla County. And then yesterday afternoon was a Parks Committee meeting. Kind of the item of discussion there was whether or not to implement a increase in fees at the parks. That's about it.
Okay, let's see. Well, like I said, I met with the solar company, APA. I don't know, that's the goofiest name. Met with, excuse his name. Anyway, yeah, I met with the gentleman from that company. He's preliminary. He put on a little PowerPoint about a proposed solar battery. They didn't mention site. It's in Morrow County though. $1.1 billion project, so it's pretty big. Daisy and I went to that, and he just talked about it, and that was all there is on that, so that's gonna be coming down. Went out to Beef Northwest and talked to their employee crew out there, about 80 of them. Thought it was gonna just be staff and
Well, it was full staff.
it was half, yeah, the whole staff of the whole place. Yeah, Wes Killian says, well, come on, let's go. I go out there and there's a whole crew out there. So they had their safety meeting and then they want to know what we're doing about the water. So, which kind of segues into the next one. Matt and I, Greg and Justin met to go over the latest IGA on the water consortium. And then as soon as they get our changes incorporated, we're gonna make a appointment to go see Lisa at the port and get her changes and stuff, and hopefully get that back to you to take a look at soon. So what's the status on that, Justin? I think you told me once.
Yeah, we forwarded, I think I forwarded on something we're gonna have, me and Greg are working on. I think we were hoping to have it done here by the end of the week, so we'll see if we can still get those updates done.
Okay. Anyway, I told the crew about that. We're doing I told them, of course, they want to know when, when's this gonna happen, you know? And so I told them this, we're getting it as soon as we can. Let's see what else. So went to Capco meeting, went to Icabo in the morning. They're not big, but they like to know what's going on in the county. Very interested, you know? So that's always a good meeting to go to. They're started up again. Their school is cranking right along. They got their football field they're working on and all that good stuff down there. So what else? Did I report to you guys that Lamb Weston was pulling out of their deal with the Crest?
Yeah,
Okay, that's been already done. I guess that's not all I got to report.
So Matt and I were at BCDA last Thursday. I had another meeting I had to jump off to go to, but I was stuck it out till about 10 to 9. It was informative and we got to kind of fill them in on some of our positions and what we were working on. That was good. And then we also did, you and I went to organics, True Organics, and had their open
Yeah, I forgot about that.
and their ribbon cutting and wasn't what I thought it was gonna be, but it was okay.
What did you think of it?
Well, I didn't realize it was gonna be a political push like it was from Department of Ag.
Oh, there wasn't hardly anybody there.
I know, there wasn't very many people there and they were, anyway, it was a little bit of a political
Yeah.
agenda in
it
that.
was.
So where did they get their raw material to make their?
So from chicken farmers in Oregon,
Okay.
mostly chicken,
It's gonna smell nice.
it wasn't bad. It was actually, they do lots of, bioprocess. It's all bioprocess.
Okay.
No, it was actually, I mean, they have different recipes for different, whatever you need. If you need, less nitrate, more potassium, they can, do their recipes accordingly.
Okay. I just know that when they land applied some chicken manure around here, 6 or 8 years ago, it was some of the worst.
Yes.
It was
So when
horrible.
Tamara and I went
Smell
to, so when Tamara and I went out to Baker Lane to visit with some of the residents, farmers out there, there was several fields that were covered in what they are putting out, this organics, and you didn't even smell it.
Okay.
They put it on top and then they water it, so it gets a bit of a hardening to it, and then it sits for a while and then they disc it in, and there was fields that were that had just been disked and some that were still capped, and we didn't notice really any smell from that to speak of. And when we were there, I mean, you could smell it, but it wasn't offensive at all.
Well, we went in storage, it was a groundbreaking to start their facility, and, so anyway, they did a shovel thing, But then we went in the storage area, a big storage area there, and they had all these big huge sacks. Because I said, well, what do those things look like? And a woman goes, well, let's get into it. I said, you don't have to cut a bag.
Oh,
She
you can
went
cut
over,
it open.
cut a bag open. I ran my hands through them. I'm so nosy, and it didn't smell.
Yeah, it was actually,
The pellets.
yeah, they're pellets.
And the purpose of them, in this case, somebody doesn't know, is to, it's for organic, people who are raising organic products, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And if you have, range-fed beef, for instance, right, or then the grass that
Has
they
to be
eat
organic.
has to be, okay, so that's kind of how
Yeah.
it goes, right?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was
Yeah, well,
very nice people. The business people out there were really,
Yeah.
really nice and wanted to talk about all sorts of stuff. And
Kind of almost a family
It
operation.
was,
I
yeah,
got
it
to-
seemed like,
Yeah, they
yeah.
have three operations, one in,
California,
one in Idaho.
Idaho, and then this one Oregon,
Yeah.
and looking to potentially grow,
Yeah, it's
obviously.
kind of a nice niche little business from Morrow County, I thought. So,
Yeah, and then last night I was in Hepner with Valerie till 8:40 at the wolf depredation meeting. And just to let you know, there was a small presentation last night. And their plan is to eventually hone that, or, dial in that presentation and bring it to the county commissioners for the possibility of, drone hazing and by county or several, maybe a multi-county purchase of a drone, and if we would be interested in, getting in on that. I told them, you're gonna have to bring a lot more than what you brought tonight for us to make a decision, because it was pretty vague.
pretty weak.
Yeah, so, did come out that the Biden administration did put out finally that they, would like to, delist the wolves. So, whether or not that gets enough traction, in the next 2 months before that election, it's hard to say, but there was some positive stuff at the negative to it was it was going through the ninth district court. So, yeah, so, but delisting would be, and they explained, we're at a level 3 in Morrow County, and or phase 3, I would say, and if they delist it and there's enough lethal take that it could drop us back into a phase 1, which is undesirable. Because there's way more, because if you don't have a certain number of breeding pairs in your zone, that they drop you back to a higher regulated phase, which would be phase 1 or phase 2. So being in phase 3 is optimal. So keeping control of them, but not eradicating, kind of is the idea. So lots of interesting stuff there. Did have, ODA was there. And, so, and there,
And then
that's the
you
trap.
got that letter on the, old growth, right?
Yeah, did I send that to you too? I did get that. That's part of the,
Yeah.
that's part of the fire,
Yeah,
the fire.
well, no, they're looking at expanding old growth protections. I thought that's what it was, anyway. They're in the middle of the forest revision plan,
Yep.
so that's something, just gonna let you. I forwarded that to you, the timber industry in Oregon is really concerned about what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think that I forwarded it to somebody too, so.
I did.
Maybe
get
you
it.
forwarded it to me.
And I did get it.
I don't know, I was floating around out there, so it's, make sure you got it. 'Cause
Yep.
you're kind of
Yep.
watching the force stuff. Okay. All right, any other business to come before the commission? If not, we'll adjourn. Thank you all.